but they all had colored hair, so I think they were definitely not on Charlie Kirk's side.
Oh, shut up and just like like it's a freaking rock. That rock changes like every day. So, like I didn't know
Probably.
well,
Okay, I
public record. Your record, having your private life exposed for others to see, was something that celebrities used to have to worry about, but nobody else. But now, everybody is online. Every single secure yourself. Wonders. Tel Aviv, which is up here. If you hit Tel Aviv, that's again the 90-second warning. If you're in Ashdod or Ashkelon, which are down here, you're going to be 15, 30 seconds warning before the rockets hit. So Israel develops this incredible technology called Iron Dome. This is what an Iron Dome battery looks like. See, they hook up battery and a bunch of essentially anti-missiles. That's what they are. There is an enemy rocket that is fired. Israel has these very precise radar systems that track rocket launches. Then there's a control system that estimates the impact point where it's going to hit. And then they fire a launcher to intercept the missile. And it doesn't bother defending against rockets that are going to land below. They have these batteries that are set up in all of Israel's major cities. Iron Dome is basically a technological error. They're hitting a bullet with it. And they're doing so with no time to basically figure out how to do it. It's right now succeeding about 90% rate, which means, by the way, that Israel gets to be nicer to us than it otherwise would be because all these rockets are actually hitting unpopulated areas of Israel. Israel just eviscerating it. It's like any other state would have no choice to go on the ground and just finish the job, which is why if Hezbollah in the north, the northern Lebanese border, decides that it wants to launch war against Israel, they have way more ordnance than Hamas does, and so Israel would be forced to go in full scale and just do what it would have to do. And Israel is being incredibly pinpointed about the way that it deals with this conflict. It's dropping knock bombs on top of buildings. They're bombs that basically shake the buildings to get out, and then they bomb the building after everybody gets out. They're calling building managers, telling them to leave. We have tape only telling building managers to clear the building, and the building managers being like, well, we don't want to. And the Israelis saying, well, yeah, there are kids inside. And the building manager being like, okay, well, if you tell kids, then it's a good propaganda for us. It's unbelievable. And somehow we'll see some sort of world there. Now, there are some international political implications that have changed in the recent past with regard to Israel. I've dealt with just specifically here the Israeli Palestinian conflict. But one of the things that has happened that is really quite massive is that if you go back there, Israel currently has a cold peace with Egypt. Israel has kind of a cold peace with Jordan. And because the Obama administration really has strengthened Iran, the three O's of Khartoum, which people remember, no peace, no recognition, no negotiation, they've completely disappeared from a wide variety of Arab states, which have decided, guess what, the Jews aren't their enemy, Iran is their enemy. So this is how you ended up with the Abraham, where the UAE and Bahrain and Morocco, all of which have been supportive of these various wars of extinction against the Jewish state, have now decided that they're going to form a quite more peace with Israel and recognize Israel's existence. That fundamentally changed the math on the ground. Meanwhile, the Biden administration is trying to walk that back by attempting to provide support to the radicalized Palestinian government of Fatah or the Hamas of Islamic Jihad. Alrighty, so let's talk about what exactly happened in the last couple of months that resulted in this round of new violence. Why don't we begin with the Abraham? The Abraham Accords were this monumental shift in how people thought about the Middle East. So for decades, the conventional wisdom is there will not be peace between Israel and all these surrounding Arab states. The reason they call it the Israeli Arab conflict, as opposed to Israel versus Palestine, it's supposed to invade all areas. The idea was that until Israel is restricted, peace. Presence reserve. It's Israeli concessions to the Palestinians. So a lot of that pressure is from like, okay, make this concession and this concession, this concession. And Palestinians could be like, oh, okay, we'll take these concessions and also we're done. And you can make things both too. So this was completely exploded by the Trump administration and Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu. And mostly, ironically, by Barack Obama. So during the Obama administration, there's a real shift in how the United States treated Iran. Iran has been threatening Israeli extinction since the Iranian Revolution 1709. They've constantly been shouting death to the Jews, America, and destroy Zionist entity. This has been their been for a very long time. And now they rebel. It's a problem. Sorry, so much in the United States. That's his presence by essentially setting up Iran to Saudi Arabia. You know, pretty real policy situation to Iran. They will be moderated to they push it off the fear. Don't have to get those moderators in power. And then it would be family of nations. And there would be this sort of balance of power between Sunni and Shia. And then it's it's turned down. There are the neighbors like it's one of this fake nation in the bottom is what they came in those concessions. So Iranians continue in secret to foster their development. Iranians take all the money that the United States is giving down and see starting service for all reasons. So we have paper map, the United States and Saudi Arabia. So there's a process of moving on between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and yet the police are very backgrounders fighting Saudi Arabia. India, that makes such a tremendous effort from the United States, but they basically brought them being from alliances with Israel and Saudi Arabia, and our problem is they stayed full of Saudi Arabia and Israel. This, of course, Saudi Arabia is to say, wait a second, our enemies are not good to the Arabs, not others. People want to think of this, it's just one big there. They have this Iranians in resources and support. And what we also is if we can some sort of work lines. And so all of these Saudis processes and all the other city states of the region decided, wait a second, our enemy is not Jew. And our enemy is the Iran. And so they started fossil inflation in medical ways with these Israelis to the point where we can try to bomb their administration of into like Saudi Arabian airspace or striking on. There's almost there. The Egyptian regime that again must have been program here spreading it's really didn't wasn't it's now general CC program Egypt is from there with Israel he says then and they decided to for decades eventually about the Israeli Palestinian issue centrality on their so the idea was stop that saying that they like stop ultimately terrible so segregation was triple administration will follow them. And so we can see fortunately Israel conservative countries Palestinian issue was different. So instead, there's one other thing very clear to everyone. We actually back Israel's rights to exist and back Israel's sovereignty. Yeah, back Israel's sovereignty. Because it was off the table. Here's expected. That's about we say that we're not going to we're a bunch of foster with Israel, right, and Saudi Arabia, and shock of shocks starts out and all the Arab nation decide, all right, is Iran, regional security, and that's exactly what happened. Okay, Biden takes over. Biden decides, and he says, well, what's the actual call? Pretend the other guy. We're going to start making simultaneously. What's another administration policies and administration? They're not take Israel as a terrorist. Instead, they're just they are support for Israel and it's awesome. Just like same way funding. It's very simple. That's why you get back into the concept. Allow us to offer parents and taxpayer dollars. Sweaty to all this comes to be fair. And so that's the kids. Okay, because now the Iranians are saying, okay, now it's the time for us to was the administration of tell them. It's obviously not always. So if you push the bed, we'll see parents how far back to instead he tells you it's not only election since 2006, not the last 2000. He's now 60. So Israel's a new guy. Famous of Israel is Europe. Arabs major airport. For essence, it's United States. So United States and also will be still there. And they've not been elected in areas. So it's Democratic United States. Well, social media so the last but not just that, also was made to answer very and so it's a full process, you know what? I didn't know what to do. And know that this was set off on operation. Stars, pushing violence against Israel. Also, they start putting out videos about how they start wrapping up a lot of the anti-Israel. There are a bunch of things happening as they Palestinian celebrate. There are critics that are people are redirect from against so it's all these rooms. So it's all these really small band of those relations. And one is that Palestinians are from history and the dance society and traces some of them. Now there was a lot of places as people was afraid to congregate by which they probably did. So this was what it's true. Lots of people congregated, they rioted, they violence. It's Texas and it's restricting access. And some of them Muslims have food, right? It's not like it's not a law. So some because it's like just roll one bad. All the old city the emotional now. In general, he's really on it. And then sometimes he's on one. So choose a lot of right. You should say the Muslims like that. On the one hand, Bush doesn't be glad that so Senator I love this. Chaos, by the way. Muslims like up there wrong in wrong. Right? You know, doesn't sound like very good instruction. So if you think Islam turns to the chosen people, you're wrong. I think you will find it actually in the show. That was always the fixing America. Set here free as far as they're it's very isolation is church for this day gets some inspiration from this marvelous habits and collecting to the this, for example. Yesterday, you only got to that's the he has its eyes on next to the real estate anywhere. That's right. Big breaks that this regime that is militarized TikTok dances like realistically hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. Some people that's the way I should say, that's what you change. This was next thing, maybe I can bring things DC like the opposite. Like that's the intriguing things great half fast these fish and I think it has different reasons why so it should be diversity representation different generations subject for statistics show Closely research for the trees, but only the funding of library houses and access to the information sources. Church. If they plan for Gaza's future, that's very true. There's a lot of very physical damage and problems of Gaza's youth learners, the village towns, see triumphs as coronation with the US handing all this power over to an unelected, heavily autistic guy who likes to laugh as his own admirer on Twitter. He's fired most the federal workers responsible for America's most important assets, including their youth. He started rolling out all his tariffs, which makes being a normal American business owner to 8,000 million% harder. It's caused insulin prices in some states to go up from around $6 to around $80. This is whilst being on Medicare, which you pay upwards of 200 quid every month for. On top of that, in a country where everyone's fat. The Davis story just got a really grim update, and I'm here to share it with you. But first, let me quickly catch you guys up to speed with everything that's happened thus far. September 9th, an impounded Tesla belonging to David was found with a body in it. During this time, David was on his Withered World tour. Mind you, he also performed at that all of this was discovered, and he was giving out Labubu's, which is crazy because how can you casually do that considering everything that's been revealed today? A spokesperson for David also told NBC that he was fully cooperating with the authorities. But honestly, how can you do that on tour? But to make a long story short, the entire situation was very confusing, and people honestly didn't know what to believe. But I think we finally have the truth. So allow me to tell you guys everything that got revealed, everything that I've learned, everything I've dug up. But I'm gonna stop yapping. You already know I'm a Socrates, and let's talk about it. David paused his tour and canceled his Seattle show after the body of the victim was identified. It was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And let me start by saying, rest in peace, baby girl. I know you was unfortunately taken from us early, but we're praying for you. I hope it's easy now. She was 13 when she went missing and was found over a year later. Here's her missing person report. And the way she was identified was by two things. Number one, with the help of her mom, who confirmed that Celeste had a boyfriend named David. And the fact a matching tattoo on her finger with David, which is just so fucking weird. And there's so many more damn evidence that connects David. That's just people checked David's Discord and found extremely disturbing images of Celeste being in there. Another was member saying that Celeste was David's girlfriend. But I personally think the worst one was from a year ago on August 2024. It was a person replying to David saying, "Drop a song on me, Miss Girl, Celeste." But it's not just Discord. It's about there were two people on Reddit making these claims. Let me read them for you. This guy is close friends from the LP ran away last year, and she was with her sister was her out. She was in 7th grade at the time. Hills, terrified that she was in the car. Nobody has heard from her in months. These names that she said, but she was from Lake Elsinore. In his speculation, it literally happened. I really care if you've heard nice things about that. Personal experiences. Also, get the to downvotes. Like it just goes to show we have to these liberties. We need to have a serious conversation how we can be developing social relationships because me and you, they're people too, and they are capable of doing bad things. This guy is from what I've heard, my sister who is now in 9th grade told me that he was dating an 8th grader. Her C, and she would go on trips with him. Hey, they're all in 9th grade now. And it turns out his friends knew and he would pay them to keep their mouth shut. She has been missing for over a month now, and no one knows her whereabouts. Definitely something strange going on. Now, the second one is immensely eerie because it refers to Celeste, who at the time was unnamed as C, which I believe gives new credibility to the post. I think what's interesting is that when you look at the Reddit and the Discord and how these people seemingly have this information about David and Celeste, it comes across as more of an open secret rather than some new revelation, which makes my heart weep for Celeste even more. Here's where the situation gets even worse. The song Romantic Homicide was released on her birthday, September 7th, and on social media, there's currently a new lens being placed over David's work as an artist. Even certain lyrics are being put into question. This, which really eerie stuff, I can't say that enough. Also, there is proof of David on the phone with Celeste. These are FaceTime screenshots. And there's even this photo from 2023 before she went missing. And all this stuff does is just further show that he had contact with the victim. Also did find alleged messages between an anonymous person and Celeste, and it confirms she and David engaged inappropriately. Celeste also confirms she had contact with a person named Gus. We don't know who he is as of yet, but based off of what she said and seeing the interaction she had with him was even horrifying than we can imagine. Some other stuff I found with people going starting TikTok reposts David had and connecting it with Celeste. Although I'm unsure how true any of this is, so I'm not going to talk about it. But the story, once again, gets crazy. Remember the Reddit post that I was talking about? He was paying off kids, allegedly. There was an Instagram account called Chandler, and he dropped some crazy shit. First by saying he had a friend that told him David owed someone in Lake Elsinore money. And being that Celeste is now deceased, it only seems even more disturbing when you put two and two together. He then followed up that story with another one providing context. This time, he was saying that David gave people money because he was with a minor, paying them. And then he proceeded to post a photo of proof. This is allegedly the photo of him paying those kids off. Let's be honest, that is definitely David. I just don't know how you can say David. This is probably one of the most incriminating pieces of evidence I've seen. But it wasn't just Chandler, another person on a different social media posted the photo as well. And they claim that with the news being released, the kids from that area are sharing it, which is a call Reddit posting the same thing. And remember, those predated all of this information. That's basically the entire update so far. Everything else is a little bit of speculation and things David has said or tweeted. And honestly, we could be here all day if I went through every single one. So with that being said, stay safe. Please don't worship these celebrities. Please teach your younger siblings that these people can be just as bad as your average person who does not have clout or following. We need to protect those around us. And once again, rest in peace, Celeste. You will be missed. What is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and what does Hamas want? Here's what you need to know. Don't worry, we're going to make it simple. Israel was officially established as a country in 1948 to provide a safe haven for Jewish people after 6 million Jews were murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust. But while there had long been Jewish people in the area, at the time there was an Arab majority, as well as minorities including Christians, and together these people were called Palestinians, who didn't want to give up their land to establish a Jewish state. Britain, which had ruled the area as part of its empire, proposed creating another country for Palestinians that would exist alongside Israel. This would be called Palestine, but neighboring Arab countries rejected the plan. They said Palestine should cover the whole area, including Israel, so they went to war. Israel not only won that war, it ended up controlling more land than was originally planned. Fast forward to today, Palestinians mainly live in two areas that were captured by Israel in 1967. These are the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The Israeli government controls access to and movement within these areas, especially Gaza, which some human rights organizations say is like an open prison. Right now, Gaza and the area around the Strip is the center of the fighting. Since local elections in 2006, Hamas has controlled Gaza, but it's considered a terrorist organization by countries including the UK and the US. Hamas does not recognize Israel's right to exist and believes that Palestine should cover the whole area from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. Both Hamas and Israel have been accused of war crimes for their attacks on civilians on both sides of the conflict. Until now, Israel has been well defended with its powerful military, its spying organization, and its Iron Dome, which usually shoots down rockets from Gaza before they can hit Israeli cities. And that's partly why this latest attack from Hamas is so shocking. It's bigger than anything that's come before, and it looks like no one on the Israeli side even saw it coming. Hamas has killed hundreds of civilians and soldiers and taken dozens more hostage. Israel has responded by killing hundreds of people in Gaza. On the 19th of January 1942, Shalom and Weiner, a Polish Jew, arrived in the heavily guarded Warsaw Ghetto. He had managed to escape the Helmholtz extermination camp, one of the 6 major Nazi death camps. He told his story to Emanuel Ringhal, a Jewish historian who made it the goal of his life to leave evidence of the Nazi crime unfolding against his community. Ringhal and his team managed to collect almost 35,000 pages of documentation, essays, diaries, and posters from the ghetto with horrific stories like the one told by Per Weiner.
But for some, their dedication to collecting such evidence under the harshest conditions means nothing. Today, in a day in history, we talk about Holocaust denial, the incredible effort to deny one of the most well documented and carefully proven dark events in the history of mankind. The Holocaust denial is a conspiracy theory that started right after the end of World War II and was gradually canonized with a set of arguments. The theory rose significantly alongside the rise of Holocaust historiography in general after the 1970s and 1980s. First claims that the Holocaust never happened, and it's just what Jewish. Second was for something, and maybe from Israel. Dangerous. It is not deny the event in a cemetery. And she is also spent by questioning the fundamentals of obedience. So, in general, so the first year, that's what I had to basics. Is very good to this since it checked the state. Since the bigger so the spirit check maintenance statement that you need to because this never evidence of the lies to and then it was specifically part of the death. And it's very contextualized the spirit within the history. So it's making Jews for conspiring against the souls of critics and attacking for centuries. Issuing that religious and Christian context and the pain of this case. Which would have been effectively fabricated. Because the letter are banks that the Jews conspiracy formation. They were used extensive animation where they originated. And justifying the Jewish laws. And the Nazi trip to the English propaganda of Jews. The claim that Jews fabricated to tradition and is a classic case of anti-Semitic discourse. It also does not take into account the fact that, apart from the 6 million Jews, there were around 5 more million people, including Roma and Sinti, mentally disabled, homosexuals, communists, and Slavs were similarly murdered by Nazis. More interesting is the claim that the Allies fabricated the Holocaust to morally annihilate their enemies and appear as world saviors, hiding their own crimes behind the supposedly terrible Nazis. While it is true that victors usually write history and create narratives that favor themselves, the evidence of the Holocaust surfaced so quickly and was so overwhelming that it is extremely doubtful anyone could have orchestrated such a massive historical fabrication. This argument implies that while fighting a world war on several fronts with millions of people and incalculable logistics, the Allies had a separate operation fabricating videos, photos, and testimonies, and paying actors to simulate deep trauma as supposed victims and perpetrators, and were ready to present all this fake evidence in an international trial in Germany just 6 months after the country's surrender, and 3 months after the war ended. And nobody said anything. However, our denier insists that there is no evidence that gas chambers existed, implying it all might be a lie. This statement is not only confusing, but also significantly misleading, if not outright malicious. It hinges on a grim reality. There were no survivors to describe the gassing process. This is a tautology, not a valid argument. It's akin to claiming that death doesn't exist because no deceased person has ever told us they died. There are thousands of testimonies from survivors that confirm the existence of procedures during which camp inmates were summoned and led to places from which they never returned. And we also know much more about not only the procedure, but also about its evolution. The use of gas for mass executions began in 1939 as part of Axiom T4, targeting the mentally disabled, then extended to the killing of Jews using gas vans, a form of mobile gas chamber. This practice is very well documented. Later, in August 1942, SS officer Kurt Gerstein, responsible for distributing Zyklon B to Auschwitz, directly witnessed executions using diesel exhaust fume in the Belzec Treblinka extermination camps, which he reported. Finally, we have witnesses from inside the camps. In 1944, the Verbal Wetzler report revealed detailed information about the gas chambers and their functions, based on accounts from a member of the soldiers collected corpses from inside the chambers. If these testimonies are not enough, forensic examinations of the remaining gas chamber sites have detected cyanide compounds, further confirming their use for mass executions. Ironically, the Nazis did not even need gas chambers to kill. Before 1941, the method of mass execution was hunting and killing with guns, leading to massacres like the one committed in Baba Yar in September 1941, where 40,000 Jews were executed in cold blood. This method of execution, however, proved to be too costly in ammunition, bad for the psychology and the morale of the army, and time-consuming. Therefore, gassing was preferred. But even denying the existence of gas chambers does not in any way deny the Holocaust, despite the Holocaust deniers' hopes. A very similar argument is used regarding crematoria. Holocaust deniers argue that the number of bodies that the Nazis claim to have incinerated far exceeds the capacity of the crematoria. This argument only sounds convincing because it implies that the person who states it has a certain technical knowledge that gives them authority to make such claims. Unfortunately for them, however, it is neither technically nor historically accurate. Exactly as in the case of the gas chambers, we have thousands of eyewitnesses who describe without contradiction crematoria looked like and how they worked, especially the eyewitness accounts of members of the Sonderkommando who were forced to work there, such as Philip Mueller, Shlomo Venezia, and Miklos Niesli, revealed the efficiency but also the problems of the procedure. In all concentration camps, there were many rooms for burning dead bodies, and, according to the SS officer Grich in a report to Himmler in May 1943, the Auschwitz ovens could burn up to 10,000 corpses a day. More detailed account by SS officer Yarlin, who estimated 4,756 bodies per day. Even if we consider this smaller number, this still makes 1,735,940 in 365 days, which exceeds the actual number of people killed there from 1941 to 1945, which has been around 1,100,000. There were periods when the crematoria could not burn all the corpses created in one day, even at full capacity operating 24/7. Such was the case with the arrival of the Hungarian Jews at Auschwitz in the summer of 1944, when around 500,000 Jews were deported to Auschwitz in a short period. The Nazis responded by burning corpses in open-air pits, creating a suffocating atmosphere witnessed by people living nearby. A famous clandestine photo taken from inside the camp during that period actually proves this practice. It is therefore an undisputed fact that burnings of corpses did take place in a shockingly efficient manner in all extermination camps, and denying this is not only a denial of the grief and sufferings of millions of victims, but also an underestimation of the grimly effective technical expertise employed by German engineers. This argument tries to undermine not the Holocaust as such importance by questioning its scale. First of all, even if 1 billion people died, which is 6 times fewer Jews and 11 times fewer people in general than the number we know is true, that would still make the Holocaust one of even if 1 billion people died, which is 6 times fewer Jews and 11 times fewer people in general than the number we know is true. That would make the Holocaust one of the most heinous examples of genocide ever happening. So, the argument has little validity from the beginning, but it is also very easy to deconstruct. Deniers argue that the figure of 6 million Jewish victims is inflated. This number is based on extensive research, including Nazi records, demographic studies, and post-war investigations. The figure of 6 million is a conservative estimate, supported by the convergence of numerous independent sources. Nazi records meticulously documented the number of Jews in occupied territories and those deported to concentration camps. These records align with the demographic studies conducted before and after the war, showing a significant decrease in the Jewish population. For example, there were 3.3 million Jews in Poland in 1939, and fewer than 300,000 in 1945. Unlike German Jews who faced a program of forced migration and some time to plan their escape, Polish Jews were immediately subjected to harsh measures. They were forced into ghettos, with the Warsaw and Łódź ghettos each containing over 200,000 Jews. These ghettos served as holding areas before Jews were systematically transported to concentration or extermination camps, where the majority were murdered. The 800,000 Hungarian Jews also experienced the same fate in an even shorter period of a few months. Similar patterns of persecution, ghettoization, and mass deportation occur.
Time for some B1 now. Specifically, is America about to win the nuclear fusion race? Now, what race is that? Say we're less than 20 years away? For those of you who don't know me, I'm Tyler Bolson, a nuclear engineer with over 10 years of experience in the commercial nuclear power industry. Engineering operations, emergency response. I don't mention everything there is nuclear, but I can certainly share some.
There are complex building sites, and then there are these. For decades, scientists and engineers have been trying to construct giant machines that recreate what happens inside the sun.
Yes, we don't have that strong solar gravity to help us out.
Say it with me, nuclear fusion. It's where instead of splitting atoms to generate power, like with nuclear fission, they're forced together at extreme temperatures. If successful, these systems can bring about a virtually limitless source of energy. But
Good for the high level description, but it isn't limitless. Deuterium is abundant, but tritium is not. It must be bred within the reactor using lithium blankets. Without breeding, tritium supply is going to run out in a couple of decades. So even faster if fusion actually gets adopted for large scale. So by that same logic, nuclear fission is limited. If you're automatically taking the frame of your understand why we're going to get out there. Some people will continue to invest in this city. It's which is chain and able to be sustained. There again, the UK people are is a big difference between the sustain. Lots of residents bringing to be difference to operations, strategies. It's and the organic catching up to this one big stadiums like just to the boss technology and times. So if we do here's the future. Down. So if you haven't seen my reaction, please be sure to check it. Let's do the whole right. How about finish this video? Get ready for it. If you don't, you're gonna think it's everything. Down. If we look together, it's great. It's fusion. I think it's fusion. It's like certainly body. To me, Celsius, that brings point to my form. This most fused together down to the great so generates selection. Yeah, that's the case. Due to the size of the sure, takes the sun pressure and things like that. So even like that, it's actually there's a sun is like that. And they are threatening using interior because these would be less than segments. It's actually certain it's get better than basically to just let's get trust yes. Trees. Especially it's always very serious. Suspended space. Yeah, that information. Very grateful. That was a few like it's not very too big. Now it's not just the active ingredient itself. It's also it's a fear. In terms of these sensation. That's your so just eight says someone else. So it's so great. I think that's nice. It follows the should be lots of items the great strong to the side. That usually better 3 hours. That's a bonus sort of gas thing. It falls the thing. It's a bunch of cells. Like process. Pretty much that on top. I actually thought that was an issue. Experience places absolutely. It's all of that is about setbacks. That makes anything that's successful. It's so many different person factors that so it's basically like sparks. This phone. Yeah. Systems. See if that's something found to a THC. Right. Just Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Activating your firm clean when the interview from that year as well. That's system, so it's to natural gas. side of the things there and design creating information data. But it's interesting. It's sitting against most students in the morning. That's what lots of people struggle to it's sort of the fears. It's just second and then it's the same. That's the term. That's the same. It's a right. So this is the right to print it out. Just the same. Try not to even throw in too many new things. Shifts. Some of the discipline. Check there. Just have some merchants. Some of those. That's actually a decent song. Some folks I fish with the pants with less than a I go on to figure out so this is decent. So this is absolutely what like that. Yeah, better really. I usually do this lessons in the house. Let's keep system. Okay, that's the pyramid. Yeah, same. It's fast. This is actually yes, it is. I go to sleep. Wake up, I play league. Play league, and then I go to sleep. I know 4 years. I text you. Text me some bits. Sick. I just felt like saying, I can't. Think you're a girl or a guy? Yes. Guy. That's right. Children, dude. They shouldn't be in the Amazing Digital Circus first. They shouldn't be in Astral Town. They shouldn't be in Hell of a Boss. They shouldn't be any fandoms that are not related to children's stuff. They shouldn't be up your island around the corner. They shouldn't be in the place in Hell. I so funny. So do you want to be my VR seller? Me? Yeah. Sure. Yay! I read a horrible story about this woman. She had this birthday. I put her in the back and let them get to death and watched it. It's pretty funny. I agree because I hate humanity. I hate sentient life. No, I'm not gonna fucking genocide people. There's weird thought. Yeah. Let's feed my dog. It's like, oh, you should go on your knees and eat dog. Like, what the fuck? Do that occasionally. And now my dog givers can be so great. I mean, people don't even know how for this for sakes. Yeah, it's not. Well, the guy's fucking crazy. Exactly. Do you even know where fucking Chad is? Do you even know Chad's in the country?
Yeah, it's my bread.
Why do I mean? Why am I even do this? Why do I even do this? Why am I even? Why am I even doing this? I can't go near like courthouses. I think I'm gonna go to prison.
You could go to your schools.
Like, oh,
You got in left.
What's up, pictures?
Okay.
If you're a kid and you're here for nothing, I'm gonna get you kicked out, some motherfucker, bro. You better leave now.
I said, hey.
It doesn't matter where you said hey.
I said, hey. That offensive?
Sorry, hey's not offensive. But when you don't say your age and you just say hey in between it, it's a little bit weird.
You never asked me for my age.
How old are you, bro?
How old are you?
More time before you get kicked out. Okay? I'm gonna ask you one more time, bro. And if you don't believe me, you're gonna find out, bro.
I have a deeper voice than you.
Promise you. Okay? Okay. There's a little
trouble.
Sneak six pictures. Yeah, kick him out.
Angels, we don't want to change your avatar.
one person's getting upset for no reason when I'm fully clothed.
You dress a little inappropriately, sorry.
No, it's something real.
Yeah, you dressed a little inappropriately.
Go away from me, you little fucking bitch. Kill yourself. He offered me the banner, I think, but then, whoa!
Hey, motherfucker. Motherfucker. Do you want to get such a being no one?
You try and break my game for looking at her.
Leave me alone. Get this man out.
Gonna get ya.
You won't leave me alone.
I'm gonna get ya. Hey,
I get you
why'd you run away?
because you look like you gonna tickle me.
You make me coffee. Can you make me some coffee?
Yeah, there's multiple kinds of coffee. If you could please go to the menu and tell me what you want. Have you decided what you want?
Yeah, coffee.
If you don't tell me what you want, I'm just gonna make an espresso.
I'll make my own.
Sir,
I'll make my own.
do you read black? Is that what you're asking for?
Your eyes will make coffee.
If you do not know what you want, if you just say coffee, this is coffee.
No,
But if you want coffee, take this or specify your order. I can make it for you. I'm offering my services.
I'll just make it myself.
Just take the fucking coffee.
That's not what I asked for. I asked for coffee.
It's fucking coffee.
I'll just make it myself.
Just take the fucking coffee.
That's not what I asked for.
What the fuck did you ask for? I can literally make you one of everything and you pick from it. What do you want?
Seriously, I mean, I'll just make it myself.
If you're gonna make my job so fucking hard, if you want it easy, you're gonna make my job hard. It's already think with me. Decide or go.
Go with coffee.
I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna take a break.
What are you doing?
So fucking difficult to work with. I just need to take a small break. Is the apology ready? That's what I got.
You're not getting a tip.
Getting a coffee.
You're not getting a tip.
You're not getting a coffee. I'll get paid for this anyways. Counter, let a woman do her work.
You know what? You're fired.
If you can't do anything, you have no power here. If you do, make the effort by the counter. Yeah, and I'm just gonna work here until someone orders something off the menu and not just as vague as coffee.
Can I have some diet water? But yeah, mom knows how to drink piss.
What?
A long story. My piss was red, so I tasted it. That's about it.
Is that this voiceover? I rather
I'll see it. What is it? What was that? Flash.
Please watch it.
Thriller memes, offensive memes. Why? I don't know. There's nothing else to watch.
Watch the Lakers.
I don't know who that is. That's sports. What in the right mind made you decide to have that? What adult man goes into stage 9 brain rot.
I believe you.
I'm gonna check. Why baby girl were you also in there?
Can I come in?
I'm not gonna let in someone named baby girl. Dude, stage 9 brain rot. Letting you in.
So this is 3 days later, I think. I loaded to a random game of Power Wash Simulator. There's 3 people in this lobby. 3 people out of thousands and thousands of people who play this game. I think you guys might have an idea of what's going on.
Do you see me? Did you see me on TikTok? I'm on TikTok. I'm on a famous guy's TikTok thing. It's a channel called Proximity Chat. It's really how you like the channel.
I never made a video when I hit 10K, and that was pretty sick. So for this channel to blow up the way it did, it's insane to me. I never thought that would happen. You know, I was gonna make a video at 10K, but that never happened because we hit 20K so fast. And then once we hit 20K, we're basically about to hit 30K, which is just insane to me. So by the time I upload this, who knows, maybe we'll be at like 40 or 50. Probably be around 40 or 30. So yeah, just thanks for watching this stuff, I guess. I don't know. I guess it's a hit. Yeah, we're gonna just keep going and see where this goes. The goal is 100K. I want that YouTube flag. So if we can get there, if you guys aren't in the Discord, it's in the YouTube bio. It's almost at 500 members. Who knows where it will be by the time I release this video. But if you guys want to be generous, you can check out my Patreon. It's in my bio.
Listen, I'm gonna need your nutsy eyeballs on this. Not in that.
Basically, I post exclusive stuff on there. I chat with people. So if you like my stuff, support me. Hey, that's always an option. I greatly appreciate it. We got a couple videos with over 100,000. So yeah, thanks for watching. So see you.
The Joe Rogan Experience has been running for 15 years, featuring thousands of guests along the way. But with that many interviews, it's no surprise that some appearances sparked major backlash from fans. In this video, we're going to be breaking down some of the most hated Joe Rogan guests and the explosive reasons why fans turned against them. Let's start with the GRE Classic, a wheat debate between Joe and conservative political commentator Stephen Crowder that quickly spiraled into one of the most heated moments of podcast history.
Just because someone gets in an accident and they're high. See, you're just hold on, stop. No, you interrupt way too much. You need to stop. You're talking for a second. No. I don't talk about paragraphs. I make full points.
The core issue was a mismatching completion. Joe is famously passionate about legalizing marijuana, something he's willing to die on a hill for, while Crowder openly admitted he didn't really care about the issue.
I probably wouldn't talk about the marijuana issue. That I wouldn't care because here's the thing. I don't care about it.
Joe fired up, and Crowder claiming to be indifferent, things quickly went off the rails.
Doesn't matter. What would you not talk about? I said probably pot because I don't care. Well, what do you think about it? I said there. That's what you're right. Think about it. Your eyes light up, and all of a sudden, genealogy and world care like crazy. We discussed. No, you're like a tractor beam on the most important issue of the day. That I said I don't care.
It didn't help that Joe was sipping whiskey and puffing on a tobacco pipe like those nuts tomorrow.
He's got high as fuck right now.
The main disagreement was over whether weed is harmful or if it offers genuine health benefits.
The traffic fatalities regarding marijuana have skyrocketed. That's nonsense. Since marijuana legalization, highway fatalities in Colorado are at here's a story of bringing up the source that you want. 5G did bring up stuff right there again. The state your website since marijuana legalization, highway fatalities in Colorado. Jamie keeps bringing up this more than 100 studies exactly using cannabis cures cancer. She denied those studies. My show, too. I can't bring it out. I think some of the very tracing in this right now. From right now, let's be honest, your conversation. It's obviously straight up their offers. That's not to read some sense. It's a fair enough to people. That's especially before he's only hanging out each thing. I'm thinking maybe you're flat out the feet of anything. See the defense of being sweetie. You know, that's not true. I think only big money means that's that's all in this country. Let's see, come on, fuck, that money, that like, so fuck my people, and the sweetest shit that you've done. My dad is a joke, so look at my call you. It's such a laughing guy that can compare you. Compare you. Compare you. One facts. I don't know. Actually, I predict what I'm saying. So I was things simply that to a safe space and it gets you done. See, great big needs and places again. I think so so try to support the brand. I think that's a sort of upstanding it's to me. It's the most I would say okay so that's what I mean. That Instagram closeness. But humanity is just something that everything was just I try to communicate on conversation and different awesome parts. Yeah, second. Things. Conversations of conceiving scenes there but I would it does. It's just like this. So they do everything. I'm here. That's years into the submarines English these things that was able to
So they will operate. So very obviously, parents. Exactly. I think he's a person was became a very public dumpster. True, the thing about it, even harder for the next guest, Douglas Murray, a journalist that Monday to appear in General Games 2, 3, and 3 to debate a libertarian comedian Dave Smith in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The podcast of them tense. Ari immediately tried to lecture you. Guests. Fascinating to see your perspectives on those things. So that's why you're going to go. Yes, sir. Since the war in Israel began, and since the war in Ukraine began, you've had quite a lot of very against the move in different ways. Yes. Do you think you've had enough? I don't know. Those things. Let's say, so it's instead of like, something that, yeah, guys, the side of Israel, as passive aggressive treated strategy to control things beside it's then offensive to early secure defensive and one ready user noted. Can't think of anyone who's ever tried to put you on the back foot like that. Can override it. Only thing you miss in. I don't think Douglas will be on again after this. As the debate unfolded, our position on the next one and repeatedly relied on appeals to authority and credentialism to reinforce his views. There's been a tilt in the conversation, and it's largely to do with people who have claimed themselves experts who are not experts. I'm still slightly bemused about this move from I'm an expert on this and I have views to I'm a comedian. I've never claimed to be an expert on anything. This is the problem, Jeff. I mean, if somebody said you have to claim to be an expert on something to have an opinion, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. So this is like I'm not a historian, but I'm pumping areas. I'm not an expert. I'm talking all the time about, but you're not even talking about specifically on what he just said. I'm saying this is my point about this. You say I'm not an expert. So what's the solution to not talk about? Oh, it's to have more experts around. You know, the experts have done a great job. I know. This is absolutely. You know what, guy? Because he like said, I just think you like me. I know sometimes. I would put my track record against any of the expert class on COVID. I'm glad to do that. So should I have just shut up? Should I have shut up by opposing lockdowns and opposing vaccine mandates until that was the argument every time? That's the entire argument that you're making. It's a bit weird to be simultaneously saying, I'm not an expert on a conflict and talking about it everywhere. I don't think so. Not really. I mean, I don't know. I don't think like, I don't see how you these things. These things. All these things that we're talking, some of them, yeah. Are you an expert? I am on some, yes. On some, but you talk about some that you're not an expert on. You'll notice what I should do. What should you do if those subjects get reached? Well, I think that you educate yourself as much as you should. You say I'm not an expert and then give your opinion if you're in the middle of a conversation. As I say, I think that it's a weird move to say I'm not an expert on this. But I'm going to talk about it nonstop. I think that is. Listen, I will certainly concede that I am weird, but I just like fundamentally disagree with this idea that, which I really do think is
quite anti-democratic in spirit and quite, elitist, that there's an expert class. They can have opinions on all of these things. It's weird for any regular person who's just read about it.
Not my view. Not my view.
Seems like what's you're saying.
This argument kept looping throughout the debate, and in a later podcast, Joe exposed Murray's hypocrisy on this point.
This idea that expert, like Douglas Murray, I love him dearly. I think he's a brilliant man. He's got a degree in history, or he's got a degree in English, a bachelor's degree. He's not an expert either. Unless we're talking about Shakespeare, shut the fuck up. Because like you're not an expert either. You know what I mean?
The most infamous part of the debate was Murray's credentialism taken to its extreme, arguing that you can't discuss the Israel-Palestine conflict unless you've physically been there.
Have you been to the crossing? Yeah. When were you last there at all?
Never been.
You've never been.
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point? Like,
No, I find that
lots of
very.
people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, so if you're going to spend a year and a half talking about a place, you should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
All right. I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't think?
No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're an expert, you have to go and touch the ground. No, I think you have to. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you spend a career talking about something. Yes, I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there. You've never seen any of this going on.
So you're not
That's
allowed to
amazing
speak
to me.
about things that you've read about. You can only speak about things that you've seen with your own eyes.
You can talk about what you want, as you're proving. But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit, whilst developing all of these views about it. Well, as I say, you can't time travel
Let's go
back to the
back to the
Nazi
block-
era.
Let's go back to the blockade.
To the Middle East and actually visit it.
Okay,
It's
the
not hard to do.
World Bank said in 1996 for the
Why
one
are
year
the Chinese quoting the World Bank? I look.
it doesn't mean anything. This is a non-argument. Yes, I'm saying the World Bank did their own analysis of this, and they said that it was a 40%
Your own analysis. On, you gotta stop interrupting and let him finish this.
said that 40% drop in the GDP 1 year to the blockade, and there's been blockade from 2007 on. So are you saying that this hasn't had an economic effect? Is that the argument?
No, of course it'll have an economic effect.
So you're saying you have to be on the ground and do an audit of the blockade in order to be able to
I
comment?
think you should at least know what it is, what the territory is, what the situation is in the region. Yes, absolutely.
And the only way
Absolutely.
to do that is to be there in person.
I think that's the best way. Not the only way, but it's the best way. For sure. For sure.
I don't you can take out the arguments or don't, but I don't.
But I say, but your argument is incorrect.
Okay, fine. Well, then present a counter argument to it. But to just tell me I'm not allowed to talk about something.
I'm not saying you're not allowed to
Okay, fine. Well, you're not an expert, so you shouldn't talk about it. You haven't been there. Yeah, I know. But you keep playing this game where it's like the whole opening to this podcast was like the non-experts talking about this is such a problem. Now you're saying because I haven't been there, I can't talk about it. Is there a blockade there that's causing economic devastation or not? The World Bank there is.
First of all, I don't think it's a game. I don't think it's a game at all.
Me neither.
I'm not playing a game. Okay?
This is semantics.
No, but this is important. I do believe that one of the things you should do if you're talking about something is to see it.
Yeah, you've established that.
Okay.
Is there a blockade?
The blockade that existed, to the extent it existed, was a blockade to try to make sure that the Israelis and the Egyptians knew what materials were going in and out of Gaza.
This argument was quickly memed and later spawned mockery from Joe and Tim Dillon on a subsequent podcast.
Wait a minute.
I wouldn't
Wait a minute before you say that.
Have you been there?
Right, that's a good point. You haven't been? By the way, how is he in all these wars? Can I just go to wars? By the way, are you allowed to just go to wars? Is that the way that you should? Can you just go to what to see of going? Can I just go to wars, or do I have to come back and say what people want me to say about the war? Can I go to the wars and have my own opinions, or do I have to have the opinions? Not if you want to go back. That's right.
One commenter perfectly captured the absurdity of Murray's argument, saying, I want to give my opinion on this debate, but I have never been to Joe's studio. Murray doubled down on his losing arguments in an op-ed published a week after the podcast, but it seemed to have flopped spectacularly. with readers roasting Murray in his own comment section, with the top comment saying Douglas Murray prefers standards to free speech because he doesn't want to defend his opinions against people that completely disagree with them. Dave Smith didn't back down for a moment on Rogan's podcast and scored many points at Murray's expense. Dave Smith responded with a methodical takedown of the op-ed in a subsequent video.
Douglas is very clearly saying here, no one's having trouble grasping it. You're saying, hey, you don't have to go to the region and talk about it if you're going to spend your life doing it. Like if you're going to professionally talk about it, then you should go to the region. Okay. How about spending your entire professional life advocating for every goddamn war and serving in none? What about that? So you can't professionally, or you shouldn't professionally talk about a place if you've never been there, but you can professionally advocate for wars and never serve in any of them. And you can professionally advocate for wars, each one being a disaster, and still continue advocating for the wars without serving in any of them. You know, Douglas Murray advocated for the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Syria, the war in Ukraine. Every one of them an unmitigated disaster. But it doesn't cost him anything. I mean, the only thing it seems to cost him is that he humiliated himself on the Joe Rogan Experience. But aside from that, not much. He's got a witch advocating for wars that he's unwilling to fight at. And yet he's going to call me out for being against the wars without visiting the area, even though he's allowed to be for wars in areas that he hasn't visited. Yeah, Douglas, no one's not grasping your point. The problem is that it's garbage. It's a horrible, horrible point.
Smith landed the final blow on Murray when appearing on Tucker Carlson's show.
Dave, I'm really glad to see you. I know you've been here before. It's nice to have you back.
I am an expert in all things Tucker Carlson.
As someone who's always liked Douglas, and known him for a while, my first instinct was why he just destroyed his career. Like he's done. No smart person will ever take Douglas seriously again. And I don't know if he felt that way, but it was clear by a day or two after he realized he destroyed his career. And in response, rather than admitting that and admitting what he'd done wrong, he attacked you, really kind of doubled down in the New York Post. So I'm going to read this, and I'm quoting, claiming some Jewish ancestry, Smith has spent the last 18 months since October 7th being very unfunny. Indeed! Claiming some Jewish ancestry. Now, I'm not really sure. I'm just going to, I don't know why that just, so what, do you claim some Jewish ancestry?
My mom and dad are probably the big ones. Because I do claim some Jewish ancestry.
Joe gave his views on the aftermath of the debate on a subsequent podcast.
This appeal to experts. Just because you have a degree, you're not always right. You're wrong all the time.
Yeah, that was pretty disappointing because I thought Douglas Murray, I liked listening to him. I thought he was super smart. Obviously, for that.
So good.
Yeah, and that. But then on that one, I think I told you it was like, or I texted you something about, man, he seemed pompous. It's like that seemed like that took a big. For me, it was a loss for him, big time.
Well, he used tactics rather than facts. So the tactic was an appeal to experts like that. And there was also saying that the coverage was imbalanced because they didn't have enough people that were pro-Israel. But then I thought about it afterwards. I'm like, I have quite a few. There was Jordan, Ben Shapiro, there was Coleman Hughes. There's been quite a few people that are pro-Israel. Not even that people are anti-Israel. They just don't want to watch people get blown apart.
Right.
That seems pretty reasonable. But instead of debating how this is done and what is being done militarily, it all became about like who are the experts and what are the things that should be discussed and should it be balanced and do you have an obligation? Like that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is to get down to business.
Mhm.
So what he's doing is like putting you on the defensive right away out of the gate.
Yeah.
Which is like I recognized. I'm like, okay, if you really want to do that kind of a debate, if you really want to use those kind of tactics rather than a discussion of the issue, which you've never been, like that kind of stuff diminishes you publicly because everybody knows what you're doing. Because if you understand conversations, you understand this is not, you're not really engaging with the ideas, you're deciding
Whether or not a person should have these ideas or be able to, you've never been there. Like you can't, how can you have an opinion? You know, at least you should do the courtesy. Like now I'm virtuous. I've been,
Right.
I'm elevated. I'm better than you. You are diminished. You haven't even been there.
Yeah.
Your opinion is basically meaningless.
Yeah.
You know, and then it gets to this weird place where it's like, who's allowed to talk about what?
Despite the consequences of topics, Dave Smith, very slow against the focus from German Israel. I don't whatever the host of the TV show and everything took a similarly condescending and lecturing approach. Sonoba had built his entire career around being a professional skeptic, debunking myths and correcting people's misconceptions of a smoke of things. Actually, well, if he tried to bring that same energy into the European experience, it backfired massively. The first topic they clashed over was whether alpha and beta males actually exist. Sonoba confidently declared the entire concept is unscientific nonsense.
The idea of the alpha male doesn't exist in humans. Like if you talk to any anthropologist, any biologist, any sociologist, right? Then be like, are humans organized in a social relationship where there's alphas and betas? They'll be like, no, what are you talking about? This is an unscientific idea. Right. And we just did something laying that out in the context of like people who are, oh, my type is I like alphas. Right. Well, there's no such thing actually, you know, humans are some of your dominant in some situations, not in others, but you'll push back.
And if you ask girls, like, what are you into? And you say, are you into tall, muscular, confident men who are also nice to them? Jesus Christ, it's going to be off the charts. It's going to be like most of them.
I'm really not sure that's the case.
Really? That doesn't make sense to you that women would be attracted to someone who's fit?
Look, I mean, it's a hypothetical, right? Like, certainly athleticism, right, is something that is attractive, right? That's something that many people find attractive, right? Not everybody finds that attractive. And I don't think that we can necessarily reason backwards to like a specific evolutionary relationship, right? Because the truth of what those evolutionary relationships are is like often a lot more complicated than our immediate intuition about it.
The next topic is what really got news into. I don't forget that what comes into this. Argued in favor of giving programs to children of 6 to 7.
You're seeing folks transition much earlier age, you know. And so if someone is transitioning
the age of like, 7 years old, right? And working with those hormones, from that age, right? They're not going to have, their body situation is very different than that you postulated. So
There's no reason to give kids hormones. And there's no reason to decide before the frontal lobe is completely fully developed, which doesn't even take place till like 25. People don't know who they are. A 7-year-old, you won't even, people don't even get their 7-year-old phones. You don't let them phone. You let them decide what sex they're
Yes. And so given to flow by the basic choice question.
Why do you have to give them hormones to make them more of a girl? Because
I'm sorry, can you expand on the question?
it's a simple question. If you say that the child thinks it's a girl, so you're going to give the child hormones. If the child thinks it's a girl, let it be a girl. Like you don't have. Why are you adding hormones? If you're shooting hormones into a child and you're affecting the child to develop, you're saying that's not a choice. That's nonsense. Of course, it's a choice. You're choosing to chemically change this child's body. You're choosing to inject things into this child's body on a regular basis that are going to radically affect the physical development of their body.
Yeah.
And you're saying this isn't a choice. Well, it's definitely a choice to do that.
I think he went into the sports are just a social construct designed by men. And that is the reason why men got advantage.
So many of the sports were designed for male bodies, right? They're optimized for male bodies.
Even with the slightest pushback, Joe, and then his argument quickly from all to uncertainty.
Basketball, for example, right?
How is that optimized for male bodies?
It's like the height of the basket, the way that the ball, if we're gonna say that,
Joe went on to dismantle Adam's argument even further.
Most of the games that we've constructed are actually sort of biased towards a male type of body, right?
That sounds ridiculous. First of all, the reason why gymnastics is like why women are good at gymnastics. First of all, their flexibility, their lightness, all those things. Also, they're not competing against men in a one-on-one type of situation. Like one's trying to defend, the other one's trying to attack, like a game of basketball or a game of football.
The conversation then got even worse. With the final nail in the coffin, Adam being the topic of transathletics in sports. Adam essentially argued for an inclusive approach. And while the intention may have been noble, it ultimately meant defending the idea that trans women should be allowed to compete in sports. However, Adam got to being what the very real physical differences between men and women and how these create an uneven playing field, as Joe explained.
Males are faster and stronger. There's a reason why there's a male and a female division. It's not that these sports were designed for males. It's that men are physically bigger and stronger and faster. These are physiological advantages. Yeah, you can have a thing like a gymnastics balance beam event where women are going to shine because they're lighter and more flexible and they can do things with their body that men can't because of the shape, all the mass, all the different things. But that's rare. That's the outlier.
A perfect example of this situation is Falcon Fox. A trans athlete finds out who fractured the skull of a biological female opponent during a bout, leaving her with a concussion. This controversy became a defining moment for Joe, who'd been heavily criticized by Stones, but he remained strident in his position, as he discussed in other podcasts.
The reaction that people have to this, like how strongly they're committed to this. When there was a transgender fighter that was hiding the fact, Farrell Fox, hiding the fact that they were biologically male and competed twice. That's crazy. Like you can't, and trying to say that it was just a medical procedure. And when I thought rightly got angry at it, I saw all these articles written, all these pieces about how transphobic my position was, what a horrible person I was. Like we're literally talking about someone not telling someone. I said that, look, if you are a transgender athlete and you tell someone, hey, I was biologically male, now identify as a female, would you like to fight? And that person still says yes, all in. Go ahead, have fun. Put Brock Lesnar, chop his dick off and put him in a dress. That guy's going to ball through the women's heavyweight division like nothing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Because we're built different, and it's just a fact. And anyone who tries to argue that is crazy. I was watching it. It was like watching a man fight a woman. That's what I was watching. I was like, this isn't like particularly, she wasn't particularly skillful. It wasn't like she had like some unbelievable background in judo, like Ronda Rousey or something like that. It wasn't that. You're just literally watching a former man beat up women. We never had the benefit of 30 years plus of testosterone in the body.
Adam was thoroughly exposed as one of the strong opinions, but unable to back them up, with his arguments breaking down on basic scrutiny from Joe. Almost the entire conversation is dunking upon him, with one capturing what viewers were thinking, this dude is walking to a BuzzFeed alt. And throughout it all, Adam's constant vocal takes became impossible to ignore and created a little games. One commenter joked, take a shot every time Adam says right to see the afterlife.
Right, right, right. Right. Right, you know, right, 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 go right.
Unable to handle the backlash from his Robin appearance, Adam had to find an echo chamber to make him feel smart again. Months later, Adam appeared in a surprise live stream, a popular leftist platform, to give his side of the story, and it was pure damage control.
You know, having a conversation with Joe Rogan, specifically around the trans stuff and the backlash you received as a consequence of that.
He sprung that top of the conversation on me. It was not something that like I think I should be the representative of to talk about because I was there. I was like, all right, I mean, I'll go to bat for what I think is right here as best I can. But you know, when the dude is like locked and loaded with like, you know, Jamie pull that up shit of whatever pseudoscience he wants to bring up. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't the best position to be in. He turned it immediately into a boxing match, and I wanted to have a conversation. So all the backlash was like, oh, look at old you. He won a debate against you. Like, I thought I was having a conversation. Like,
Yeah.
I thought I went out to just like talk about my show and like, you know, spitball shit because we're fucking comics. And he turned it into a fist fight, which that's what I don't think of.
What was the feedback? Like you got a lot of backlash, right?
His fans came after me for a couple months and
Yeah.
it was you know, again, a conversation, but
Hey, what's up? Shit. He did? How much? Holy fuck. Dude, I'm gonna go. I've never been there. That's lit. It's very nice of him.
You know, I like to make them funny.
Make a Jew joke. He would find that so funny. Say Mazel Tov. Say Mazel Tov. It's gonna be so funny. He's gonna laugh. He will, he will, he will.
You say when you cheer, it's like, what's that? Like, pull out.
He'll laugh, he'll laugh. He'll think it's so funny.
Okay, but then go ahead. He said to put your big boy pants off.
Bruh. Okay, fine. Okay, I'll see you. Bye.
Go, man.
intending to have. But it was just like beta cut, just like the very basic stuff. No one's actually like advancing an argument of any kind. No one actually cares about the issue at all, and I'll point out, like, I say to him multiple times, hey, you should talk to like an expert about this. You should talk to like somebody who knows what they're talking about. Like, I'm not sure why we're having this conversation, but it's because, you felt like as a punching bag in that moment,
Rather than learning from the experience, he doubled down on the exact arguments that go for destroying.
Sports are fucking social constructions. We made them up. And so we invented sport. Yes, there are differences between male and female biological, born, whatever, assigned at birth male and assigned at birth female bodies. We designed sports such that the most popular ones are like designed for a male body. What if we didn't do that?
Since the podcast, things have got much better, right? 2022, he released a show titled Game World by Funnel on Netflix, which is basically a law reducing propaganda and trying to justify ever expanding government Europe's influence hard, with 57% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Netflix quietly buried it after one season. Then Adam took the sponsorship, Sam Albert's dystopian world coin crypto that pays people to scam Bibles. For a guy who built his entire career as a professional skeptic, chilling for a dubious crypto project is the ultimate hoax. Adam then released his own version of the issue on TV.
I am fucking embarrassed. I'm humiliated, to be quite honest.
It seemed Adam was treating it doing everything, including his own reputation. If you thought Adam Bono was bad, just wait. Bono's appearance from the Joe Rogan Experience stands as one of the most disliked episodes in the podcast's history. Getting completely ratioed over 23,000 dislikes. Known for being outspoken on political and economic issues, Bono used his time with Jerry as yet another opportunity to play the role of a wealthy celebrity, lecturing the public on their moral duty to help the poor. The main source of controversy came when Bono launched into a passionate defense of USAID funding. He argues that cuts to foreign aid were responsible for thousands of deaths, while Joe pushed back measured skepticism.
It's not proven, but the surveillance enough suggests 300,000 people have already died from just this cut off, this hard cut of USAID. There is, I guess, 50,000 tons of food that are stored in Djibouti, South Africa, Dubai, and wait for it, Houston, Texas. And that is rotting rather than going to Gaza, rather than going to Sudan, because the people who know the codes or for the warehouse, the building are fired. They're gone. What do you think? What is that? That's not America, is it?
Well, they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? This is the problem. For sure, there have been a lot of organizations that do tremendous good all throughout the world. Also, for sure, it was a money laundering operation. For sure, there was no oversight. For sure, billions of dollars are missing. In fact, trillions that are unaccounted for, that were sent off into various, they don't even know where because there's no receipts.
But the real backlash stemmed from the glaring hypocrisy. While preaching about taxpayer responsibility to fund global charity, one of his famously structured his financial affairs to avoid paying taxes. So while arguing for taxpayer-funded charity like USAID, he simultaneously does everything he can to avoid paying mandatory taxes. And he didn't stop there. Bono shifted into a broader lecture about America's fault, a message that came off less as admiration and more like sentiment against preaching.
Americans, no matter what political color, they just you see them just the size, they just grow in stature when they know they're being useful. I mean, really, really, really need you. The world, we need America. And sometimes it takes putting your money where your mouth is to show what freedom is. America did that. We owe America. And we need you. That's all I want to say. We need you, and together. Wow. It's just part of the blessing of America. Is this okay? So it's less than 1%. It's half of 1%. The government budget to keep all these people alive all over the world. They love America. Because they love America, they're not going to be a problem for America. They don't look. It takes them away from terrorism. Takes them away from anti-Americanism.
Jerry wasn't buying their spiel. One to comment summed it up perfectly. One who saved the environment, one private jet flight at a time. One comment nailed this inflated sense of self. One knows what's most important for names. And if you don't believe me, you can ask me so. One whose policy even extends to when he attempts charity directly. His organization one took nearly $15 million in donations for philanthropists, but only distributed a measly $184,732 to actual charity. That's barely 1%. Meanwhile, over $8 million went to executive and employee salaries. And if the irony wasn't big enough already, one of them the entire class while literally wearing glasses. The visual metaphor couldn't have been perfect. Whole performance felt like a South Park episode come to life. In fact, South Park did an episode betrayed Bono as literally the world's biggest piece of crap. The episode involved evil, saving complex, and obsession with being South Park incarnation and his appearance here. Same understood, condescending realism, and total lack of self-awareness that the South Park episode nailed his seems to live up to his reputation perfectly. While he still has his defenders among the two fans who praise his willingness to engage with 3 points, it's safe to say Bono didn't. But if you thought Bono's appearance was toned down, point to about Cash Patel, then the FBI lost the entire audience at the time. Joe Rogan has covered the Jeffrey Epstein case in multiple podcasts before. In fact, Joe himself had previously been skeptical of the actual narrative. Are you after on everybody? It's just what exactly is going on here. It's just thing that they murdered that guy in jail. Sweet. Yes, done. Let's say it's concert. Yeah, nobody actually believes he goes up. I haven't met anybody left wing, right wing, center, apolitical. Everybody's like, that's kind of sketchy. Yeah, I've met some people who believe it, but they have no reason. It's like they have this like vested interest in wanting to believe. Yeah, just skeptics. Yeah, not even necessarily skeptics. It's like maybe they have some weird connection to it they want you to know about and want to make it look like it's not that big a deal. They got them. One of the most eerie ones was when Case questioned about it. He's dead now. Yeah, he's dead now. So you have to be careful.
You had a number of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein. You met him 10 years ago. He was convicted of soliciting prostitution from minors.
Yeah, he's dead. So, in general, you always have to be careful.
It's a mind virus. And it's a mind virus that demands compliance to comply to this ridiculous new ideology. And a part of that, and this is where it really annoyed me about his argument, was that that should apply somehow to sports. If you take a biological male of normal athletic ability competing against a biological female who is the elite of elite, the biological male has massive advantages, especially in things like combat sports.
It's a shame because Tyson does have genuinely fascinating insights to science and universe, but his constant interrupting, his ego, and his need to always be the smartest guy completely overshadowing his strengths. And for many viewers, especially Ronda's audience, it became more of a cautionary tale than a crowd favorite. But if you think Tyson's arrogance was bad, wait until you meet next guest, Terrence Howard, the actor who thinks he's revolutionized mathematics and physics. And ironically, Tyson was one of the scientists who debunked his claims. Terrence Howard's journey into pseudoscience didn't begin on GRE. It began publicly in 2019 on the Emmy red carpet of places, when Howard made headlines by announcing his retirement from acting.
You said after you complete these 15 episodes of Empire, you got to walk away for a while or forever? For good. I mean, everyone keeps trying to tell me, don't say it's forever. 37 years pretending to be people so that people can pretend to watch and enjoy what I'm doing. I'm putting something on YouTube. I will build the planet Saturn without gravity and build the Milky Way galaxy without gravity.
But that was just the beginning. Howard's unconventional theory, cheap writers, teleology, lead further infamy when he presented his most infamous claim at Oxford University that 1 times 1 equals 2.
Math for the basic laws of physics to break down in order for 1 times 1 to equal 1. Yeah, if I say to you, what's 1 times 1? What'd you say? 1? It equals 1? Anybody in here that thinks 1 times 1 equals 1, and you give me 2 pounds and I'll give you a pound back. And we'll call that even, right? It's now like if 1 times 1 equals 2, we've got equilibrium of balance. 1 times 1 equals 1, you've got loss. 1 times 1 equals 3 or more, you're talking about over unity.
When Terrence Howard first appeared in the Joe Rogan Experience, he unleashed a torrent of extraordinary claims that made his previous outbursts obtained by comparison. But before diving into his wild theories, Howard explained where these ideas came from, and the origin story was almost as bizarre as the theories themselves.
You're dreaming and falling, and you hit the bottom, you wake up. That's my first memory, but I didn't wake up here. I was inside my mother's home. I knew about 5 years old. And another train. And this room filled up with like this fluid, a dark fluid. And there was a being there. He said to me, if you could have anything in the world, what would it be? But I said to him, I want to know how everything works. And at that moment, he used his left hand, he opened up the door. And it was this mansion, and inside of it was this crystalline flowers. Big crystalline flowers, like a giant, like 5 feet across. And every time I tried to see his face, he would reach in and hand me another shape. And I was so fascinated with the shapes because they didn't look like the platonic solids. They didn't look like anything I've ever seen before. I woke up from that dream. But after that moment, anytime something strange would happen in a dream, I had the powers of perception. And I had access to all the knowledge. The proof of it is the 97 patents that I have.
These are things that you had in your mind from the time you were born.
From before that time, because I remembered that I had been someplace else before.
With that mystical foundation established, Howard proceeded to make myriad dubious claims that defied basic physics and mathematics, all derived from his pseudoscientific theory of teleology. For example, he makes the claim that gravity is not real, but simply an effect of electricity.
Gravity is supposed to be the greater the mass, the greater the track. You take a balloon, you rub it on your leg, you put it over the ground. Watch the dust particles jump off the ground, off this big mass called the Earth, and jump onto that balloon. Because why? Electricity is 137 times stronger than the rule of gravity or the effects of the so-called gravity.
Howard also makes the claim that planets are just excretions from stars.
Can you tell me how a planet is formed under this theory? So you have a sun,
And how does the sun give birth to these planets?
The same way we defecate and have gas, like Jupiter's, that red spot on Jupiter, that's spinning on it, that's going to become a moon.
He then claims that his knowledge can be used to destroy the world.
So I was angry, real angry. And I was going to use all of the knowledge that I had. I was going to destroy mankind. Like, oh my God, right out of Marvel. Oh, like, yeah, I was about to, but
these are just a few of the claims that he made in just over 3 hours of podcast. Howard also talked about the alleged dark controversy that led him to abandon acting and directed him to pursue his theories. Howard's domestic violence allegations have been public knowledge for years, but on Rogan's podcast, he framed these controversies as a part of his scientific awakening.
They had an agenda.
Yeah.
Because remember, at the same time, they were calling me a wife beater and all of those things. That same woman that had painted in a black eye, she took those pictures herself and she was blackmailing for years. She destroyed my name. But like I said, I thought that was a death blow, but that's what took me back when I had nothing. That's what took me back to this, and that greater being started showing up again.
And according to Howard, the forces working against him extended beyond his personal. To the highest levels of power, and he believed the government was surveilling and actively working against him.
Man, don't turn my phone off. Don't do that. And every time I get ready, well, because I know they're watching me right now, and they're mad at me.
Do you think they'd fuck with your phone?
Oh, I'm sure, because now I couldn't even, I have to turn it off.
Do you ever drop your phone? You ever drop your phone?
I've dropped the phone a number of times, but
you ever think that might be what's going on with your
and
phone?
then I buy another phone and the same thing happens.
Coincidentally, not later in the podcast, Jamie's computer also started glitching out whenever he tried to pull up Howard's models.
No, it's about to happen.
No, nothing's happened. My computer just frozen again, is what I'm trying to say. Something's freaked out to my computer. I'm gonna have to just try to.
You want to reboot?
And I think I already did. I'll try again. I have to pause.
Okay, no worries. What's the matter?
What I can see on that screen is not what I can see on my computer screen.
It's you think it's not? No, this is going to be the short one.
Computer just reset itself to because it's been files freaked out.
Yeah.
No, I go to Neil deGrasse Tyson. You know where your computer fit.
It'll be the first one.
That is it. The codec.
I have no control of the computer. Alt tab does nothing. Escape does nothing. Space bar does nothing.
Maybe you dropped your computer.
Maybe you dropped your computer, Jamie.
Among the scientific community, Neil deGrasse Tyson stood out as one of the most vocal critics of Howard's claims, a reaction Howard went on to describe on the podcast.
I reached out to Neil deGrasse Tyson. He was like, hey, man, yeah, I'd love for you to come on my show, do my radio, do my TV thing. We love that. I was like, yeah, but I've got something I want to introduce to you. And it was only 36 pages. It was a treatise. But I started it off with 1 × 1 = 2. And he went in with my treatise, wrote, redlined everything. And he attacked it with such vitriol that I was like, oh, okay, maybe I need to walk away from this. But he said, if you have any other questions, you're going to have to see somebody else, and he wouldn't take my calls anymore. I was like, okay, so I wrote the book based off of those responses.
It's very interesting that would be his take as a public educator, that he wouldn't want to push you anymore.
The reason I wanted to talk to him was because of his show, The Cosmos, that he was doing after that incredible guy, Carl Sagan did.
However, Tyson's official video response provided a different account, where he diagnosed Howard with the Dunning-Kruger effect, essentially a polite way of calling him stupid without actually saying it, before calmly debunking Howard's treatise line by line.
I recently learned I got name-checked by Terrence Howard in his recent appearance on Joe Rogan. It can happen is subject, let's say, the hobbyist, it's called. It's possible to know enough about that subject to think you're right, not enough about that subject to know that you're wrong. And it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's the phenomenon where a little bit of knowledge, you over-assess how much of that subject you actually know. And then the more you realize, no, I didn't know as much as I thought I did. So then there's a sort of a lull there. And then when you learn even more, you come back up. Ultimately, learning enough to know whether you were right or wrong. I'm going to read you just my opening line here. It's titled 1 times 1 equals 2. So I lead off by saying, this is an ambitious work that is a clear indication of a restless, active mind. In these pages, however, there are many assumptions and statements that are underinformed, misinformed, or simply false, thereby compromising or nullifying any of the subsequent conclusions you have drawn.
In a highly anticipated second appearance by Joe Rogan Experience, Terrence Howard was joined by Eric Weinstein, a mathematician who had a PhD in mathematical physics from Harvard. Ironically, Weinstein has his own controversial geometric unity theory, making him somewhat of an outsider in traditional academia himself. Before Weinstein debunked Howard himself, he did defend Howard regarding Tyson's response.
This idea that
Bill said, he just wants to submit to peer review. It's the biggest bunch of shit I've ever heard. We've got to. I cannot believe how disingenuous this is. He calls you the worst insult in academics, which is Kroger. Dunning-Kruger affects both an effect that is studied and the ultimate insult. It's basically your mom.
Weinstein took a charitable approach, admitting he had been much more infuriated by the response to Howard's first podcast and the podcast itself. Weinstein wanted to stigmatize Howard's position, to present his ideas in their strongest possible form. But despite a more diplomatic approach, Weinstein still dismantled Howard's claims in the podcast.
What did I say that wasn't true? That's what I'm, that's.
One times one is not equal to two. Let's start there. That, in fact, I'm angry at Joe because Joe should have pushed back on that.
Weinstein presented Howard with the standard theory of everything equation. It became painfully obvious that Howard didn't even understand the current accepted theories that he was trying to turn.
I think I understand this, and I'm able to talk to you about it. So this is my community and how it thinks of everything in the world. Do you have a way of relating what you think about in terms of what my community has wrong? Does this mean anything to you?
If you remove gravity outside of the equation, take gravity out, because gravity is affected. Gravity is actually covered by that strong electrical force.
Terrence, 1 second. Without, this is not a gotcha.
I know. I'm just saying.
I don't know how to read this.
As best as we're talking about, I is imaginary.
Yeah.
You know, D to the 4. I don't know what the D.
So that's the volume element saying that you're in 4-dimensional space. You're going to take an integral.
And y to a negative G, y to a negative gravity.
It's the determinant of the space-time metric with which you might have an issue. Okay, so in other words, you're normalizing. You're saying that if the rulers look one way or the rulers look another way, according to Einstein, you have to put more weight or less weight on a region of space. Do you know what that R is? That's the foreplay, and then in the parentheses where the stuff gets crazy.
Explain it.
That's what's called the scalar curvature.
Probably the funniest part of the podcast is Howard's response to Eric's feedback.
Now, this thing that you created is based on an error.
What's the error?
The error is that the arc cosine of -1/3 is not equal to 3/5 pi.
Garlic makes my feet.
Okay. Okay. But
Parents with timing today. I'm sorry. It may be the whiskey.
It is the whiskey, certainly.
No, I know, but
Certainly not. All right. That's clear.
Howard's most recent appearance on the PBD podcast is where he doubled down and made his most outrageous claim yet.
So after I'm done here today, I'm going to put online the equations necessary to have a thing called unlimited energy, to be able to pull energy directly from the flux, just to say fuck you to the world. I'm going to show them how to pull energy directly from the flux.
The audience reaction was pretty harsh. One comment saying, Terrence Howard has made the fatal celebrity mistake. He's confused being famous with being spotted and everything else. There was a lot of hate directed towards Howard, but the Jerry audience seemed more dumbfounded and entertained by the spectacle. But our final guest took things to an entirely different level of hatred and controversy. Josh Dubin is a prominent civil rights attorney and executive director for the Paul Rita Center for Legal Justice, helping incarcerate people prove their innocence through DNA testing. He has appeared on Jerry many times, either by himself or with monthly convicted individuals to share their stories of injustice, and these podcasts were really well received by the Jerry audience. But it was on episode 2096 that Dubin decided to do something he's never done before.
I figured we'd do something a little bit different. Typically, the person sitting to my right is someone that was wrongfully convicted. So I don't want to bury the headline. Sheldon is guilty.
Sheldon had recently been released after serving 25 years of a 50-year sentence. Dubin brought him in as an example of disproportionate sentencing in the justice system. The episode started out normal, with Johnson coming across his reform and optimistic about his future.
Then I started going to school, did the correspondence courses. I got involved in the Cornell Prison Education Program. I obtained my associate's degree, and then I went on to obtain my bachelor's in behavioral science from Mercy. I started working in the law library. I discovered that I had a knack for complicated things, case law, and I was helping guys, and I was actually helping guys get out of prison. And I started running programs, and it felt good. It felt good to be able to call my family and send them pictures and invite them to these events where they can actually see me change. They can see tangible change
However, despite the goal or positive message, the podcast took a foreboding time. The cycle of from the street to prison back to the street to prison, most of the time, it's churning out monsters. There's a great book called In the Belly of the Beast about a guy that went to prison, and he describes what it did to him psychologically, and then he goes out and he murders someone. And he writes this book just explaining, I want you to understand what this did to me. I read it when I was in college. And I should read it again. I probably have a different perspective on it now. It might hit home even more. And when I got out, I made a decision that I was going to walk away, and I didn't care about what the consequences was. And I said to myself, I've been doing bad for so long, I'm going to try to do something good. If all else fails, I could always go back to do bad. Breaking tonight, a man charged with murder moments ago facing a judge accused of dismembering a body and then carrying some of the body parts back to his home. He is the man alleged of committing a particularly heinous and evil crime. 48-year-old Sheldon Johnson, accused of killing a man and dismembering his body. But Johnson says they have the wrong man.
Senator Johnson's legacy, Lincoln ex-con who turned his life around, it will be submitted footage of Sheldon allegedly disposing of body parts. When the news of Johnson's arrest broke, Rogan gave his reaction and reflected back on the podcast.
A month after he was on the podcast?
Yes.
How long was it after he was on the podcast? 2 months? 82 months. Cut some dude's head off. But the homie didn't understand new HD security cameras. Like, this dude put a blonde wig on. They got crystal clear footage of him with his goatee on, wearing a blonde wig, carrying some dude's head.
How good was he at selling himself as this reformed person?
Well, you know, what does it mean? Okay, so he didn't kill anybody in jail. And then he's out now. He's got this new decent life, and he's out, and he's trying to do something different with his life. Should he have gotten 50 years for that? I don't know. I mean, it seems like when he got out, he was kind of a bad guy.
Yeah.
But was that because he spent 25 fucking years in jail, which is an insane amount of time to be locked up in a prison and then expect to acclimate?
So you're saying did prison make him much worse?
Did prison make him much worse?
Dubin later returned to GRE to address the situation and reflect on what happened.
So I guess we just get right into it. The last case that we talked about, we had a very unfortunate incident happen after the podcast. About a month later, the gentleman beheaded somebody. Allegedly, yes. Allegedly. There's a lot of allegedly. My first thought was, I had two thoughts, was that poor guy that got killed. And it was a gruesome murder. And my first thought was for him and his family. And then I think my second and third thought, maybe in tandem, was this tore down 50 years of work that a lot of people have fought really hard for and really need. And I felt like I let you down. Look, no one could have imagined what's in the dark recesses of that man's soul. Whether it's, his group home upbringing and abuse, the prison experience. It's not to make an excuse. He did it. If he did it. If he's convicted and he did it, that's on him. What I'm guilty of is giving a guy a second chance. And why am I reluctant to say this? I can't apologize for giving someone a second chance and then, they squander it. All I can do is say, what could I have done better? I promise the next time I bring a guest on, it will be vetted. The guest will be vetted a lot more thoroughly. And, there's no way you could have known. There's no way I could have known. And, it's interesting because I was for 48 hours. I felt what it was like. I felt what it was like to be a headline. And then I was like, this sucks. For the wrong reasons. It was like, I know you were in a dark place, but I'm glad you got out of it. Yeah, it's not about taste time. Yeah.
Although Joe was very charitable towards Dubin, the comment section certainly was wrong. With comments like, besides the body parts in his freezer and multiple other crimes,
Sheldon Johnson is a good dude. The judge said I was a menace to society. The judge was correct. Look, imagine being locked up for being blocked by the system for over 25 years, only to prove the system was right. Amazing. It seems a shame that Dubin's advocacy work has been overshadowed by the serious charges against Johnson, who maintains his innocence. Ego clashes and ideological meltdowns, to open debates and full-blown controversies, these were some of the most hated guests to ever appear on the Joe Rogan Experience. But if you thought they were bad, wait until you see this next guest disaster appearance. Super cut down to just 5 with 2 minutes.
You know what's surprising gets under a lot of people's skin, be it if they're a child or an adult, being told what to do, or perhaps even more so, what they can't do. And I am sure you can relate to this on at least some level. Maybe a teacher told you to stop making your notes once, or meeting. Or perhaps, even in the worst of cases, someone told you to put down your phone if you're watching one of our videos. Blasphemous, I know. So if that already makes your blood boil, as it should, hold on to your temper, because I'm about to hit you with a few more things. They don't mean things that you shouldn't, probably won't do, more like things that are literally impossible. As today we're going to take a look at a few ancient places that humans used to live, places that simply no longer exist. Not fair, right? Now off the bat, you may be thinking of places like Pompeii, the Roman city that was wiped out by volcanic eruption. But I'm not referring to any ancient cities. Instead, I'm talking about entire pieces of land which were once explored by our ancestors that have literally vanished from the face of the earth, along with all the wonders they held. Many of which don't even exist anymore anywhere, including extinct prehistoric animals and lost cultures. And perhaps no ancient land better represents these two things than the giant realm of Doggerland. And yes, this is both an actual place and it's real. Today, the United Kingdom is known for being isolated from the rest of Europe, something which they really took to heart during Brexit. But once upon a time, they weren't so distant, and in fact, were close neighbors who were once connected to the rest of the continent through what is now known as Doggerland. A massive landmass that in its prime was even larger than certain countries like Switzerland or the Netherlands. And that's pretty massive for a now disappeared land, and also massive in terms of what was lost. Which also makes one wonder, how was something like this even discovered? And that's actually a pretty unusual story. Imagine yourself back in the late 19th century, and you're an English fisherman, working out on a trawler along the Dogger Banks. Not the most flashy job, and probably one that got pretty harsh at times, with chilly weather and lashing rain. But then, one day, while you were out in your usual route, you start seeing some strange things along your normal catch, namely what seems to be a bunch of plant material, specifically the type you'd see from plants on land, not what you'd expect at the bottom of the seafloor. And while you may not be all that excited to be pulling up plants instead of fish, I will say congrats, because you've just become one of the first people to find any evidence of Doggerland, and now of course forgotten land. And this story is basically how it went down in real life. Trawler revealing that plant matter existed in the depths of the North Sea, which was unlike anything you'd expect to find. And things soon got stranger, as other items were recovered from the abyss, with a big find consisting of a lump of peat, which possessed a barbed antler point, says in the bark mark, because what this implies is that humans manipulated it. In other words, they discovered a man-made relic in the Ice Age, which was dated to between 6,000 and 12,000 years ago. And so this sparked the initial perplexity that a real lost world resided at the bottom of the sea. In this interest, in the 1990s, a paleontologist created speculative maps of this land, dubbed Dogger, the name for better or worse. That's done since. In these maps, provided just enough juice for a surface, prevented the Dogger land from existing, and they gave us rough ideas about that being said, this part was still a lot easier than solving just about any other question regarding this lost region, including its origins. And while the exact details will likely always remain easy, many agree the region got its start roughly about 8,000 years ago, during the onset of the last glacial cycle, which was a cold spell during the Greater Ice Age, which, for the record, has lasted far longer than 125,000 years. It is this cold spell that we usually imagine the Ice Age to have been like. With all that ice, mammoths, and big stuff roaming around. And with the arrival of this last glacial cycle, the world's sea levels drastically drove as ice extended further, and thus exposing Doggerland to the world. However, I will mention that its land has been exposed periodically prior as well.
but the term Doggerland explicitly applies to the region as it was during this last glacial period. Now, given its higher latitude and the fact that the ice age was raging on, it shouldn't come as a complete shock that you would have needed to pack a few jackets or beds and most likely some mammoth repellent just to visit. However, timing be very important to determine your exact magnitudes, as this lost land experienced many different biomes over the ages, especially as the ice age warmed, leading to times of tundras, temperate grasslands, and forests, where rolling hills, valleys, wetlands, lagoons, and plains were plentiful. And these environments actually made Doggerland exceedingly fertile at different points. And we know that many walks of life ended up taking residence here, as fossils from literal lions, wolves, hyenas, mammoths, saber-toothed cats, bison, deer, aurochs, and woolly rhinos have all been discovered by boats. And of course, my title of this video, we humans, included in this list as well. Yet I'm using the term humans as a rather general term, because actually the oldest known people of Doggerland were not necessarily us, so to speak, but rather our cousins, the Neanderthals. A small fragment belonging to a young man was located in the Middle Deep, some 60 kilometers or 10 miles off the coast of Sweden, dated about 40,000 years ago. On top of this, various tools and weapons attributed to Neanderthals were found as well, including flint flakes and spearheads, suggesting that our between the day was the busy afternoon, 69th Street Red Light Station in Chicago. On duty that day was an experienced train operator who had been guiding trains through the city since 2006 without a serious incident. But on this particular day, something was different. He was distracted. Surveillance footage captured him looking away from the tracks, smiling and gesturing, completely unaware of the tragedy that was about to unfold. At the same time, Fallon Smith, a 37-year-old mother, accidentally dropped her phone on the railway tracks, the very same tracks where the operator's train was approaching. You can see her searching for it in the CCTV footage on screen. And when she finally spotted the phone, she made a split-second decision to climb down and retrieve it. As she did, a nearby security guard warned her to get off the tracks. But with the noise of the busy station, it's unclear if she heard him. She grabbed her phone and rushed towards a service lane, but it was too late. Meanwhile, the train operator remained distracted. In an instant, his demeanor changed as he realized what had just happened. His train had just collided with Fallon Smith, who did not survive. On July 3rd, 2019, the CTA announced the termination of the train operator, citing a violation of operational guidelines. Surveillance clearly revealed that he was not paying full attention to his duties. However, it remains unclear whether, even if the operator had seen Fallon Smith earlier, he could have stopped in time. Nonetheless, Fallon's sister, Randy Munn, expressed outrage, not only at the train operator, but also at the lack of action from bystanders and security personnel.
I knew what the last 8 seconds of our life was like, but I'm traumatized. I'm hurt. I'm disappointed.
Sadly, incidents like this are not isolated. Chicago's railways have seen several major accidents over the years. In 2014, a Blue Line rail operator fell asleep while guiding a train to O'Hare Station. Surveillance footage shows the train hurtling past the end of the tracks and crashing up an escalator, leaving over 30 people injured.
Female operator now admits she fell asleep at the controls and didn't wake up until moments before the crash.
Though two of the city's worst rail disasters occurred decades earlier. In 1972, a catastrophic collision between two commuter trains resulted in the loss of 45 lives and left over 330 injured. Then in 1977, a derailment in the central business district caused over 180 injuries and claimed 11 lives. Even with advancements in safety and awareness, accidents like these, though less severe, continue to happen, serving as a harsh reminder of the ever-present risks on our railways. Volcanic eruptions have shaped the Earth throughout history, leaving behind unimaginable destruction and triggering mass extinctions, nearly wiping out life on the planet. And in 2019, this destructive force was unleashed once again. to Stephanie Brandt, alongside her father, Paul, and her sister, Krista. On December 9th in 2019, they were on vacation in New Zealand on board the Ovation of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean cruise, a cruise that would take them here, White Island, one of the country's most active volcanoes. Yes, the entire island is literally a volcano. And so Stephanie and her family soon docked to the shore, greeted with what felt like an entirely different world, shown in the footage on screen. The island felt lifeless but full of energy, with massive towering grey rocks and clouds of steam that came from its many hot springs. At the center of the island was a massive crater, filled with a steaming acidic lake. The tour guides would lead visitors to this point before returning back to the shore. By now, Stephanie and her family were enjoying the experience. They had just started walking away from the crater when Stephanie paused to take a photo. But as she lined up the shot, she noticed something like smoke rising from the lake.
Pretty good, pretty good. How are you?
Shout.
Sorry, I'm editing a video and I had to do it on my phone. My computer can't handle video editing. As you can probably tell from the lagginess.
At 2:11 p.m., the volcano erupted. A massive shockwave sent people to the ground as an acidic cloud of poisonous gas, boiling water, and ash shot 12,000 feet into the air. In seconds, almost everyone was engulfed in scorching smoke. The island became an oven, and those closest to the lake lost their lives instantly. Stephanie could barely breathe, her entire body overwhelmed by the heat of the toxic fumes. Time stood still. Until, at last, the smoke started to lift, exposing the full scale of this disaster. She and her family needed immediate medical attention. The aftermath was catastrophic. Stephanie had third-degree burns to 70% of her body and ended up receiving skin grafts from 12 different people. And tragically, both Crystal and Paul succumbed to their injuries. In total, 22 people out of the 47 on the island during the eruption lost their lives. And what followed was a grueling recovery process for survivors. Stephanie later appeared on 60 Minutes to talk about her experience and on her sister, Krista, and her father, Paul, as she adjusted to life after the tragedy.
I pushed forward for myself, but for my mum, my dad, and my sister.
She also went on to take legal action against Royal Caribbean, stating they hadn't sufficiently warned her and others of the dangerous recent activity observed off the volcano. Only a week prior, falling mud had been seen flying close to 100 feet in the air, a level of activity not seen since its last eruption in 2016. However, such information was not adequately disclosed to the cruise's tourists. Ultimately, Royal Caribbean settled with Stephanie for an undisclosed amount, and in the end, all visits to White Island were suspended. Today, this incident serves as a chilling reminder of the dangers of eruptions, and it begs the question, which volcano will be next?
Eight, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff. The 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
STS-51A, NASA's 25th Space Shuttle mission. The Challenger launch on January 28, 1986 was a major spectacle, watched live by countless people. With the crew of 7, their goal was to deploy a tracking and data relay satellite and to also study Halley's Comet as it went past the sun. What also made this flight so interesting to the public was that one of the crew was actually just a civilian, not a trained scientist or astronaut. This was Krista McAuliffe, a teacher from Concord, New Hampshire. She was part of the Teacher in Space project, chosen from 11,000 applicants who wanted to take part in the flight. As a result, she received a lot of media coverage.
The president said the first private citizen was going to be a teacher. I remember Steve saying, well, you've got to apply. This would be wonderful.
Did you think you had even a prayer?
I really didn't. I was almost doing it kind of like when you play the lottery and you don't play it, you don't win.
And to support the teacher, schools throughout the USA showed the launch live to students in their classes. Meanwhile, watching the flight in person was many of the crew's friends and families, as well as others who attended the event on that cold winter's day. Here you can see Barbara Morgan, the backup civilian applicant who would fill in for Krista if she couldn't make the flight. Together, as the Challenger launched into the air, everyone watched the mirror. And eventually, shock and horror.
I figure you were just seeing Krista McCullough's parents watching in horror. These are the students from her school.
Do I get down?
You may not realize yet what has happened. You see concern etched on their faces. The breath that they've been holding released. Then the realization sets in that something is wrong. 73 seconds into the flight, at an altitude of 46,000 feet, the craft broke apart, sharing the area and debris for more than an hour. The entire crew had passed away. People were shocked, horrified, and absolutely devastated. What should have been a proud moment for the nation, the crew and their friends and families, became a heartbreaking disaster. Following the incident, wreckage of the vehicle was recovered, including the crew's cabin, which remarkably remains largely intact during the breakup. This suggests that the crew likely survived the initial destruction, as the cabin shielded them from immediate harm. However, upon impact with the ocean, determining the exact causes of their passing became possible. According to NASA, it's believed that they succumbed to oxygen deprivation or the force of the impact shortly thereafter. The last recorded words of the crew were said by pilot Michael Smith less than a second before the shuttle broke up. Though data after this point was lost, though evidence retrieved from the cabin's wreckage suggested that at least 3 emergency airbags had been activated after the 4 recovered. It's disturbing to think that even some of the crew may have actually been conscious as the cabin fell. And the darkest part? This was all avoidable. According to NASA, the shuttle's breakup was the result of a leak in one of the 2 solid rocket boosters that ignited the main liquid fuel tank. What are known as O-rings was supposed to prevent such a leak, but the cold temperatures that day actually resulted in them not creating a seal. So if it had just been warmer, this incident likely wouldn't have occurred. Though what's especially disturbing is that prior to the launch, engineers had actually been voicing concerns about the seal's reliability for over 2 years. In fact, they'd even warned this could be a major issue the night just before the takeoff, pushing for the launch to be delayed due to cold weather. But authorities overruled them. And so, if these engineers had been listened to, 7 lives could have been saved. Following what happened, in an attempt to prevent such disasters from occurring again, NASA implemented its stricter safety protocols and introduced significant changes to its safety oversight. But nonetheless, the widespread media coverage and the live broadcast, Krista being set to become the first civilian to go to space, and the failure for authorities to listen to the warnings from their engineers, made this launch's disaster tragic. Even 40 years later, the lives of bravery, Francis Goby, Michael Smith, Nelson Onzuka, Judith Resnick, Ronald McNair, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe aren't forgotten.
We mourn their loss as a nation together. The families of the 7 who cannot bear the full impact of this tragedy, but we feel a loss. We're thinking about you so very much.
February 24th, 2010, Dawn Bradshaw, an orca trainer at SeaWorld Orlando, was preparing for her next big show. You see, SeaWorld was well known for their elaborate performances with Shamu, who would perform all kinds of entertaining tricks and stunts. It was the show that brought many to the park. Although in reality, Shamu was actually a name used for several different owners over the years. One of them, who Dawn was about to perform with, was named Tilico. That's over 12,500 pounds and over 22 feet long. He wasn't just massive, he was dangerous. Because Tilly had a dark history with humans and had actually attacked several different people in the past. Two of them, Kelty Byrne and Daniel Dukes, didn't survive. Kelty, a part-time trainer, accidentally fell into the pool housing Tilly, while Daniel, a trespasser, entered the August tank after hours. And yet, here we were, preparing for another show with this apex predator. Now, despite the dangers of her job, Dawn genuinely cared for the animals she worked with, considering them like her own children. Her passion for orcas had been a lifelong dream, one she had nurtured since the age of 10. By 40, with 15 years of experience at SeaWorld, she'd become a prominent trainer, widely respected for her dedication.
Obviously, they're doing a lot of you too, we're working together and have a lot of fun as well. Amazing. Thank you. You really are.
But soon this dream was about to be completely torn apart. The day was already off to a bad start. A previous show had to be ended prematurely because the orcas were agitated and chasing each other. And now Dawn was up for the next one, called Dawn Shamu. In the footage on screen, you can see Dawn working out. It doesn't appear like anything has gone seriously wrong, but there are some subtle problems with the performance. The orca wasn't quite following his training. When Dawn blew a whistle to call Tilly back for feeding, he ignored it and kept repeating the previous trick. Clearly something was off. But the show continued, and ultimately nothing went seriously wrong. Until it was over. You see, following the performance, Dawn stayed by the shallow end of the pool to spend some time with the orca. At this point, even though the show had finished, people were still watching. Some from the cafe, which is where this video was filmed, and some from an underground viewing area. Now, Tilly was trained to also swim down to the window and greet the visitors. And so Dawn, knowing that people were still watching from down there, gave the orca the signal to go say hi. But that's not what happened. Instead, Tilly grabbed Dawn, did a barrel roll and dragged her under. The visitors watched in awe as the orca unleashed its strength at Dawn, pushing her around in front of them.
You know, if you don't know, no idea. Okay, I already no, I don't know. Okay, someone is saying that they are getting out of order now. There are people working on it yet. 2 or 3,000 people over there right now.
Now, at some point, Dawn found her opportunity to break free and made for the edge of the pool. But it was no use. Tilly seized her again, dragging her back under. Onlookers could only watch in helpless terror as the nightmare unfolded before their eyes. It was one of the most disturbing things they had ever seen.
And how many folks are in the area? Yeah.
So again, in the education members,
Okay.
photographers, okay, make sure to make sure.
Okay. It didn't happen.
Okay.
An opportunity to break free, made for the edge of the pool. But it was no use. Tilly seized her again, dragging her back under. Onlookers could only watch in helpless terror as the nightmare unfolded before their eyes. It was one of the most disturbing things they had ever seen.
These are guests.
Okay, in the education members, okay, photographers, okay, make sure to make sure.
Okay. It didn't happen.
And then they saw it. Okay, so I'm gonna be in water. So I knew that it's
After what felt like an eternity, finally, Dawn was pulled away from Tilly and out of the water. I won't get into the details of her injuries, though I will say they were devastating.
Oh, wait.
Fortunately, Bill, after it, I can't even imagine how horrifying those final moments must have been for Dawn. Overpowered by a walker, an animal she deeply cared for, in front of a crowd who couldn't do anything to him. As a result of this tragic incident, trainers were no longer allowed the water with orders during performances and weren't even allowed to touch Tilly. The park was also fined $75,000 by OSHA. And further, in 2013, the release of the documentary Blackfish exposed the darkest side of the captivity, forever tarnishing SeaWorld's reputation. Nonetheless, because of what happened, Tilly's interactions with trainers were heavily restricted, and he was kept largely isolated until his passing in January 2017 at 35 years old. In the end, Dawn's passing remains a tragic reminder of the risks of working with such powerful and unpredictable creatures like Tilly.
We just have a very worthy for the architect. And it's like more. We don't expect you to have the teacher. Draw
On May 17th, 2023, a nurse at a Yarmouth Lodge aged care, 000, Australia's emergency hotline. She reported that one of the residents had grabbed into kitchen cutting utensils and was wandering from the facility, disturbing others. After multiple failed attempts to persuade the resident to put the objects down, the nurse realized she needed help, fearing someone would get hurt. The resident in question was Claire Nowland, a 95-year-old woman. Claire was well known in her community and led an extraordinary life. For her 80th birthday, she celebrated by going skydiving for the first time. At that age, Claire was still active and doing remarkably well. But as the years passed, Claire's health gradually declined. At the age of 90, she moved into the Albion Retirement Home in Coombe, New South Wales. And Claire's major deterioration would take place just a couple of months prior to May 17th. During this time, her behavior became increasingly unpredictable and erratic. She had a confrontation with nurses outside. She tried to scale the front gate and got stuck in a tree. And a few days later, Claire got angry and shoved a woman with her walker. She was no longer herself, as Claire had developed dementia, a devastating illness that gradually erases memories, leaving individuals confused about where they are. Dementia can also lead into depression, something that will soon have serious consequences. Following the nurse's phone call, emergency services arrived at the facility to assist with the situation. However, strangely, upon their arrival, Claire was nowhere to be found. With no one actively watching her, she seems to have disappeared. How this happened remains unclear, as the older woman had limited mobility and relied on them to get around. Even so, the presence of the silverware made her potentially dangerous, and it was unclear how easily she could be disarmed. After all, a single gash could pose a significant risk. So where could she have gone? Well, Claire hadn't actually disappeared. She was just around the corner from those looking for her, as shown in this CCTV footage. And as the group left the area, Claire slowly and quietly moved in into the women's treatment. I should note that by this point, she had put down one of the two kitchen utensils she was holding. In any case, with so many people searching for her, she was eventually found. But this is where the case takes a tragic turn. The video on screen shows the emergency responders approaching the treatment room where she was located. Here they asked her to put down the silverware. Seemingly confused, she put down another object she was holding, a pen light, but kept hold of the kitchen utensil. She also began to slowly move toward the responders as they attempted to reason with her. Now, at this point, given how slowly she was moving, one might think that the reasonable response would be to just close the door and wait for her to cooperate, or continue monitoring her from a safe distance. After all, she wasn't in any position to chase anyone, and this approach would minimize risk for everyone involved. However, Senior Constable Christian White
faced with a situation, made a different decision. Put it down now. He said, stop. Then you see this, taser. Christian was in fact holding a taser, and his warning was serious. If you come in, you're going to get tased. Stop now. Don't let me give you another warning. And then stop. Just operate. In less than 3 minutes after finding Claire and attempting to negotiate with her, Christian Weiss deployed his taser. He got up. He said, Claire immediately collapsed to the ground, and officers approached her to retrieve the dangerous silverware. Claire on the floor, White crouched beside her, saying, Claire, you're all right. But Claire was not sure. You see, during her fall, her head had struck the ground, fracturing her skull. She was taken to hospital, but 1 week later, Claire Allen succumbed to brain hemorrhage. Christian Weiss was charged with manslaughter, but pleaded not guilty. He defended his actions by stating that his primary concern was protecting those around him. However, the case's prosecutor argued that a reasonable person would not have considered a dangerous confrontation inevitable, stating, quote, this is nearly speed, and it took her a minute to shuffle forward at Lisa before she was tasered. Prosecutors described his actions as utterly unnecessary and obviously excessive, adding that the body camera footage of the incident, which was shown in court but is not available to the public, speaks for itself. It's worth mentioning that the footage was reportedly so distressing that some individuals in the court left after witnessing it. As a result of his actions, White was dismissed from the force and was found guilty of manslaughter. This case is particularly tragic. Claire Allen's decline and eventual passing had a profound impact, not only on her family, but also her community. She is remembered as a well-respected, much-loved and giving member of the local community, as well as the loving and gentle-natured matriarch of the Nowland family. It was the night of July 10th, 2014. Carrie Budd was driving her parents, Sharon and Randy, to a Broadway show in New York City. Randy, who was previously driving, was taking a break, sitting in the back while Sharon was in the passenger seat. They'd come away from Ohio, making this a particularly long trip. By this point, they'd only made it to Pennsylvania, so they still had a fair way to go. Though this trip would be cut short as they reached the Gray Hill. Because something smashed through the windshield. It sounded like an explosion, but it was so dark it wasn't clear what just happened. In any case, Ken pulled over and turned it on so they could investigate. What they found had changed their lives forever. A boulder the size of a volleyball had crashed through the window, colliding with Sharon's head. The following phone call was made by Randy to an emergency operator.
Oh my God! I'm on the highway, routing on windshield, and I'm right there, and I think I'm right there, and oh my God.
They're over there taking the radio.
God. Asking for like,
What are your name, sir?
my name's Randy Budd. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Sharon was rushed to hospital and immediately underwent a series of emergency surgeries. The impact had resulted in Sharon's brain swelling rapidly, and so a large piece of her skull had to be removed. Randy and Kaylee were then told that calling your loved ones, she's probably not going to make it through the night. But Sharon, as a former cancer survivor, was strong, and with the exceptional treatment of her doctors, she, against all odds, actually managed to survive. At a cost. Doctors had to remove a large area of her brain, parts of her face, and she was left blind in one eye. And the section of her skull removed was replaced with medical-grade plastic. Not only that, Sharon was left severely disabled. Following the incident, she required a 24-hour care and intense rehabilitation, having to relearn how to speak and walk. So how is it that a volleyball-sized rock
Well, it wasn't an accident. You see, as the attack happened, Haley had been driving an overpass, and on that overpass were 4 teenagers. Teenagers who had just been vandalizing the area, hitting windows with baseball bats. And now they'd moved him on into the bridge, where one of the boys, Dylan Long, decided to drop a bolt. Next guy saw Dylan and his friends were to blame for Sharon's injuries. Ultimately, they were caught, and they were sentenced to prison. Dylan received the longest sentence, 4.5 years, before he was released in 2019 on parole. Tyler Porter and Greg Lim, Dylan's brother, each served less than 2 years and released on parole in 2016. And Kiefer McGee made a stunning recovery.
What keeps you strong? What keeps you so happy inside?
This guy takes good care of me.
Meanwhile, Randy was working with State Senator Gene York to make it happen.
We strongly believe from the get-go that if there's protective fencing up on that highway, I probably won't be sitting down here to talk with you today.
Randy actually succeeded, getting a bill passed in his home state, Ohio.
It's done. We won. We got it done.
Next, he pushed for Pennsylvania. Though, unfortunately, while this was taking place, Randy was fighting a battle of his own. Tragically, Randy went on to make a heartbreaking decision that no one anticipated. On August 6th, 2016, he did the unthinkable. He passed away. According to those close to him, he felt incredibly guilty for what Sharon had to go through. Less than 3 hours prior to his passing, he wrote a text to State Senator Gene York saying, "Please get the fence issue settled," showing just how much he cared. It's difficult to watch those old videos of Randy now, without thinking about everything that's happened afterward. Today, Randy's ashes remain with Sharon, who resides in an assisted living facility. Despite everything, Sharon remains a sweet, caring, positive person. You're a fool. October 25th, 2016, Kate Goodchild was with her family at Dreamwalk, Australia's largest theme park. She was with her daughter alongside her brother Luke and his partner Rosie. They were exploring the park, taking in the sights and deciding which rides to try next. And like so many others, they stumbled upon what was widely considered one of the park's most popular rides, the Thunder of Rapids ride. A ride where visitors were strapped into a raft and floated down a stream, designed to mimic whitewater rapids. Kate and her family decided to give it a try, getting in the queue and eventually boarding the ride. The raft seated 6 people, so 2 others joined them, Cindy Lowe and her son. But like all rides, it eventually came to an end. Their raft was pulled out from the stream and onto a conveyor belt, headed toward the exit platform. Though ahead of them, they noticed another raft on the tracks. It should have been nearing the exit platform too, but for some reason it was stuck. Something wasn't right. You see, what they didn't realize was that the ride was not functioning. In fact, it had been all day. One of the 2 water pumps responsible for maintaining the fluid movement of the raft had stopped working. This caused the water levels to drop, stranding the raft ahead of them. However, despite this issue, Kate's raft kept moving, drawing closer to the stationary. At this point, you'd expect the hard stuff to stop the ride entirely, avoid a possible accident. But they didn't. Instead, Kate's raft continued toward the stranded one until they collided. The impact caused the 2 rafts to push upward, with one ahead then fell back into place, but as it did, it acted like a lever, forcing Kate's raft into a vertical tilt. What followed was a nightmare. All 4 adults were thrown from the raft. 2 were caught between it and the moving conveyor belt, while the other 2 fell between the gaps in the belts into the machinery below. Tragically, none of them survived. Thankfully, the children managed to climb out and escape. But as they did, they witnessed what happened to their family members on the very ride they'd been enjoying just moments earlier. Following the incident, the water was drained from the ride so that they could recover those lost their lives. A process that took so long wasn't completed until the next day. The scene was reportedly so disturbing that many witnesses and paramedics required counseling.
Nevertheless, the park closed for 6 weeks as the case was investigated and the lives lost were more. What was uncovered by the investigation was deeply alarming. The ride hadn't undergone a single hazard assessment in its 30 years of operation, and staff were inadequately trained and unaware of proper safety procedures. They didn't even know the location of the emergency stop, partly because it wasn't labeled. A failure which explains why the ride wasn't fully stopped when the first draft became stranded. Though the ride should have really been stopped entirely as soon as the water pump malfunctioned, which happened multiple times that day. As Coroner James Paducah noted, so much could have been done to prevent the tragedy, including installing a system to simply monitor the water. This would have enabled staff to detect issues early and resolve them before they escalated. And that wasn't all. The investigation uncovered numerous other issues too, prompting McDougal to conclude that it was simply a matter of time. As a result of the pressure, the parent company of Freehold, later branded as Coast Entertainment Holdings, was fined $3.6 million, and their CEO resigned. Additionally, the company and the park suffered tens of millions of dollars in losses due to a significant drop in attendance and various legal settlements. And because of what happened, the Thunder River Rapids ride, once the park's most popular attraction, was completely demolished by 2018. So far in this video, we've explored several dark cases involving tourist destinations, but this one feels especially close to home. I've personally been to Dreamworld many times, and have actually been on the very ride where this tragedy took place. It's chilling to think about what happened to those 4 people, and to know that with such glaring safety issues, it could have happened to anyone, at any time. On YouTube, you can find videos of people enjoying this very ride, completely unaware of the potential dangers. The one on screen was filmed just 2 weeks before the incident. No one knew what was about to happen. Kate Goodchild, Lynn Dorset, Lucy Arabi, and Cindy Lowe should still be alive today. Tragically, due to incompetence and negligence, Kate and Cindy's children must now grow up without their mothers. Today, a memorial stands in remembrance of the park where this tragedy unfolded. October 1st, 2017, the last day of the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival in Vegas. It's an experience. At times it can dance with anything, but at times everything changed. It was the final act of the night. Jason Aldean was performing in front of 20,000 men. Loud cracking sounds echoed through the area, followed by leaves. With limited lighting, the concert was rather dark. Add to that the loud music and the roaring crowd, people didn't really know what they were hearing, or what was going on. Was it just firecrackers and fireworks? Quickly, Jason Aldean stopped performing, and as you can see here, was visibly concerned before exiting the stage. And when the music stopped, the concert became just quiet enough to hear the screams, which amplified as the cracking sounds continued. Slowly, people began to realize that those sounds were not firecrackers. People ran for their lives. Some took cover while others jumped fences just to get as far away from the area as possible. But no one knew where the bullets were coming from. And as concertgoers cleared the area, what was left behind was a sea of people on the ground, some in immense pain and others motionless. Victims of the most devastating mass shooting in modern U.S. history.
Where? I'm sorry, your fish. Where? I think one concert. Right across the building from Mendel Estates. How many people? All right. Thousands of people. Okay. Yeah, not a problem. What do you see?
Meanwhile, in Mandalay Bay, a security guard, Jesus Campos, was checking the 32nd floor. Strangely, he noticed the doors to the fire escape had been blocked off. At the same time, he began to hear what sounded like construction noises. But what he hadn't realized was that he had just stumbled upon the assailant. Unfortunately for Campos, the man had also set up hidden cameras in room service carts along the hallway. He was being watched. Before Campos noted, he too was targeted.